Hey everybody, this is Nick von Walkerbarth and you're listening to the VonDubCast. If you want to skip right to the interview, you can skip about 10 minutes. But before you do, please do a couple things for me. Subscribe to this podcast, share it with all your friends, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, all those things. It really helps. And if you want to go the extra mile, leave a review or check out any of the things that the guests mention in the intro or things that they want to plug and just support them. That's all I can ask from you guys. Thanks. All right, welcome everybody. Episode 68 of the VonDubCast. Got a really fun one for you guys today. Have my buddy Zach Sexton on to chat some NHL playoffs for you guys and give you a little bit of a outlook on what we saw throughout the season. As you'll hear, I didn't watch too much of the American games, but I watched so much of the North Division this year. With my Oilers and my girlfriend's Jets, almost every night we had at least one or two games on, and it was really fun to get that much hockey and to see the teams and to not just know the Oilers really well and have a little bit of an idea of certain teams. You know, you might know one guy here, one guy there. If it's in your division, you might have a little bit better of an idea of them. But teams like Montreal and Toronto and Ottawa that usually we don't see much, just to get in depth and to see the battles and to have it mean something every night, even though the standings might say otherwise. The Canadian pride and just what it was, it felt like every game meant something. And I think in Canada, or at least for myself, maybe people will find this too, it felt like before in a regular season, just using my Oilers for example, when you play the Sharks or something, you might know a Sharks fan, right? Like, or you might know a Ducks fan, you might know a New Jersey Devils fan, but when it's this North Division, you have stakes because you're going to know somebody that's a fan of Vancouver, of Toronto, of Ottawa, because you know, they're everywhere. Hockey is just such a big sport here that the stakes were meaningful if you're a big fan throughout the entire season. I just had so much fun with that, and it was fun to really dive in and watch the sport to this degree where I've never done it before, and it just opens up. I find this with so many things. It's just the deeper you can dive into it, the more enjoyment you get out of it. If you understand the game better, if you force yourself to learn the finer details, the finer and finer. And I always thought that I knew how I played hockey growing up. You know, I did hockey for 15, 16 years. It's got to be. I thought I knew everything, and just to realize how ignorant and how wrong that is, and just how little you understand of what that sport is on that level and what goes into it. It's really fun just to be humbled and to realize you don't know shit, and then just enjoy it from there. And once you have that understanding, your enjoyment just goes through the roof. And I find that with so many of these things, it's just go into it like a white belt. Like, you don't know shit about it. You just got to soak up all the knowledge you can and listen to the people. And that's what's so fun about having podcasts and stuff. You can do that with any subject. You can find an expert, somebody that is at the absolute peak pinnacle, has reached the mountaintop, and you can learn from them and see what it's really about. And that is what I love about sports in general, and just, I don't know, I guess life in general and all my interests. I shouldn't even say sports because this goes so much past that. I just think there's so much opportunity with the internet, with podcasts, with YouTube, with Twitch, all these things. Whatever you're passionate about, you can find something in it, and you can really dedicate your life, and you can find ways to make money off it too. Like there's careers out there. The only thing that limits you is your hard work and your creativity. It's up to you. The limits are there are no limits. So yeah. That's a little bit of my soapbox here. But yeah, no, we just kind of sat down, had a little bit of bullshit, a little bit of a catch up. Hadn't seen Zach in years, hadn't really chatted with him, but he's an awesome hockey writer. I really like how he writes about the game. And just over the years, every once in a while, I'd pop him on Facebook. I'd check out some of his articles, and I really appreciated his take on it. And he always has a take. And I love that from people. I think it's easy these days to just never have your own take and just fly with what everybody else is saying and just, you know, repost and reshare other people's shit and not speak your own mind. And I really enjoy that Zach was never that kind of guy, and he always spoke up. And doesn't mean I always agree with what he has to say, but he's a pretty good mind for the game and for a lot of other things. And I think that is what I find fascinating and really makes me enjoy these conversations. So this was a really fun one. We broke down all the playoff series, a little bit more concentration on the Canadian ones, obviously. Went over some of the storylines from the season, the Wilson stuff. I had a really good time just, bullshitting about hockey. This is kind of the conversation that I've been wanting to have on this level of just how I enjoy the sport. Like, I feel like this was just so limitless. I've had some hockey talks before, but it's usually with, ex NHL players or ex high level players. And at that point, it's more me asking them questions about what they think and what they saw from, reaching those heights and being there day to day. But it's fun just to sit down with another guy who's just a fan, who just loves it like I do, right? Like that is way more my style. Don't get me wrong, I would have NHL players on all day if I could, but it's also fun to have a one like this where you just shoot the shit like you do with your buddies, right? Like when me and my buddies Chase or Drew or Travis or any of these guys, like this is kind of how we talk about hockey, and I'm hoping that that'll come across with you guys and hopefully give you a nice primer for the playoffs. I know we're a little bit late. We finished recording this episode less than an hour before the first game started. We did our picks, like we had some were picks, some were just kind of like, this could go either way. We have a slight feeling, and I think both the games that have finished so far at the time of recording this intro here, I think we're down 0-2 on our picks. Both teams that we thought would lose lost game one. I think we said Boston would take out Washington, and Washington took game one, and then the Islanders. This is what I was hoping to have this episode up a little bit earlier today on this Sunday to get it to you guys, but then the Islanders in Pittsburgh decided to go to overtime, so I had to watch that, and that has drugged me back a little bit. And also, I got a puppy, guys, and oh my God, let me tell you, just even bring up the fact that I got this puppy and how much I love this puppy makes me want to cry. I cannot explain to you guys just how perfect she is and how, I've talked about it a bunch on this podcast, how it seems like since I started this podcast, the world just seems to kind of work out. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it doesn't almost, kick my ass and make you want to tap out a million times, but certain things fall into place and things happen for a reason. And I feel like we've wanted this dog for so long, and just the time it didn't work. And then we had this, we had a deposit with this one breeder, and one of the dogs passed away, and just so many heartbreaks. And I did not want to get excited because it just seemed like it was never going to be real. We'd never get a dog. So I wasn't getting excited. A couple weekends ago, another litter that we had a deposit down on, was coming up, and we, picked the dog and went down to Calgary on Friday and picked her up, and it was more than I ever could have expected. She's so perfect and so sweet and plays and has so much fun, but then gets tired out and is so cuddly, which is what I love, and just will fall asleep in my arms, and has the softest little belly, and it just has the cutest little personality. Is so full of spunk and such a little shithead, and I love it. Oh my goodness, guys. I can't even tell you. I have been just an emotional wreck all weekend because I'm just so emotionally frazzled by how much I love this dog. I don't know. I feel things deeply. I touch, feel emotions. Feel like I just feel everything deeply. Pain. Like I don't know. People always call me I was always known as the weak one that couldn't deal with pain. I think that is true. I think I do have a weak pain tolerance, but I think I just feel things deeply and everything. And that has definitely been very much on display with this dog, because I've just been emotional all weekend. Doing that crate training, hearing that thing cry when we're trying to teach it lessons, absolutely breaks my heart. The first night I was crying like a little baby because I couldn't stand the torturous little yipes that this thing was making. I didn't even understand dogs could make these kind of noises. It's ridiculous, but got through it. And now that we've gotten to know each other a little bit more, and it's so clear that we're so bonded already, and that she loves us regardless. And as soon as we let her out of that crate, she's just happy and playing with us again. It takes a little bit of the sting out of the cries and settling into that. I think that's natural with everybody, but yeah, that's what's been going on with you, with me. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys enjoy this playoff primer. Hopefully it allows you to have a little bit more enjoyment when you do get to catch these games as they go deeper in the playoffs, and maybe know a little bit more of the storylines and maybe you learn something. Who knows? Please let me know what you think. Like always, if you could share this, that always really helps. If you could tell a friend, follow the social medias, that really helps. Bike for Breakfast, if you could donate to them. I know I've talked about it in a couple other intros, probably have something in the description for that. Open Air Landscape Design, if you could check them out, give the social medias a call. If you're doing any landscaping on your house, backyard, front yard, anything outdoors, this is the perfect time to do it. Wood's expensive. Those kitchen rentals are probably going to have to be on hold till it balances out. So why not go outside? Dirt's the same price. So yeah, thanks guys. Again, love doing this. This is really fun. These types of episodes are probably going to happen every once in a while, where I record them Saturday. I was planning on getting it up Saturday night, but then, puppy time happened. So words. What I'm saying is every once in a while I'm going to do an episode like this where I record it, throw an intro on it and throw it up. Don't even let anybody really give it a preview listen like I do with the other ones, and just see what you like. So not sure if I'm going to release an episode Monday, because that'd be Sunday and Monday. It's kind of a twofer, and I might just push it to Wednesday. But either way, the next one coming out is Shaun Newman, who has an amazing podcast out of Lloyd, and was a really special conversation that has had me thinking about it for weeks and weeks since we recorded. So can't wait for you guys to hear that one. All right, enjoy. See you guys later. Wait, I'm an idiot. Also, go check out Zach's website, Historically Hockey. You can see all the blogs he writes, everything else he puts up. We talk about the story of how the website got started, and he's pursuing a dream like I am, and chasing it down. And I respect the fuck out of that. And hopefully, you guys can give him a hand. Share one of his stories. Reach out to him. Tell him you enjoyed one if you give it a read. And yeah, that really helps me. That helps the podcast when I can show an effect of somebody coming on here and having a fun conversation with me, and that translates into something that helps them in their own day-to-day life. That really makes it special for me and is a big part of what I want this podcast to be. And that adds just this other layer of meaning to something that gives me so much meaning altogether. So if you could also do that, please do. Forgot to add that in. I don't know how I forget these things all the time. I need to make better notes before I start recording these intros, but that's what's fun for you guys. You guys get to just come along the journey with me and watch me stumble. All right, now see you guys. Bye. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. I have a very special one for you guys today. I have my buddy Zach Sexton here. We're going to talk some hockey and probably a little bit of dodgeball. I'm sure I'll squeak in there, and many other things today. No dodgeball for you today?
I always talk about dodgeball.
There you go. If it doesn't come up once a day in my life, something's wrong. How you doing?
I can't complain. Just
can't complain.
Writing, working.
I bet you. So that was something I was really interested to ask you about, because I when I met you in Lister, I didn't really know that you were a writer and kind of what type of writing you did. And then when I first stumbled upon, I think I just saw you share something on Facebook, and I read, I was, holy man, this is really good. And then I started reading a couple of them, just kind of when they popped up. If I caught an eye on them, I give them a read. I'm just curious where you got your start in writing, and maybe just if you give the people listening a little bit of an idea of what you write about.
Okay, so the writing came after Lister.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense then.
Like I tried to dip my toe into it my last year in Lister, but I messaged the Lighthouse and they just didn't get back to me for like 6 weeks, and I was like, well, I don't care anymore. Yeah. I've got other stuff to do. But
I've got beers to drink.
I didn't drink in Lister.
Oh yeah,
like
right. That's just my default.
I can count on one hand how many times. Like I didn't drink at Duke's until after I was out of Lister.
Wow. Holy man. That might be a record.
Yeah. Because I remember I went to like a Chief party and someone was like, oh, here. And I'm like, oh, this is my first Duke's beer. And they're like, what do you mean?
Really?
But I'm trying to think. I want to say it was either 2014, 2015 or 2016, whatever season Montreal and Boston did the outdoor game in Boston.
Okay. Yeah.
My buddy Liam on Reddit saw a link for one of the worst website names I've ever seen, but it was True Love Sports, but it was spelled TRULUV. And they was looking for hockey writers. And I think his exact words were, if you don't apply for this, I'm breaking your arms.
That's fair.
I was unemployed at the time, I think. And I was like, okay, I need something to do. So I wrote with them for a bit. They rebranded into the equally terrible True Lifestyle Sports, but it was TRULYFE.
Oh man, they like the spellings, hey?
It was one of the worst looking websites I've ever seen. Like, I don't know a lot about website design, but it was like, it looked like something out of like 2005.
Yeah.
Very poorly done.
When the Lister Dodgeball website looks better than that one, you got some questions to ask, eh?
Yeah, like
I hear you.
Everything was like on black with this like weird white, almost Comic Sans font.
Oh boy!
But I was like, whatever. I'm writing. Maybe this can open a door. And a couple of the guys that I wrote with, we were just like, when they rebranded, we're like, you want to go just do our own thing? And so we all left, and that lasted like 2 months.
Yeah, like things usually do.
It was like there was like a group chat and we kept talking and everyone was talking, but no one was doing any work. And like, and it was in the summer too. So like, it was going to be a bit slower, but like I would submit stuff. And I remember when Rogers Place opened, I went to like the grand opening, like, cause you could book in the tour. And I took notes. I wrote an entire review of the building, submitted it that day. It got published like 3 weeks later.
Wow.
And it was like, the season's already started. Like, it doesn't matter now.
Yeah. Point? You missed the window.
Yeah. And so I just was like, what's the point of writing stuff if nothing's going to go up? Cause it's like, if you're writing about the season, you got to be topical. Even I think I did one of Taylor Hall's return to Edmonton.
Yeah.
It got published like a month and a half after it was published. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So I just stopped. And then just before the playoffs that year, I was like, maybe I just do it myself.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you can relate to.
I sure can.
It was a Saturday night, like 11:30. I was just sitting at home and I messaged Femi.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey man, like how much would it cost you to make me a website? And he's like, let me get back to you when it's not 11:30 on a Saturday.
Fair. Yeah.
And so he hooked me up and he built one for me and he still runs it all for me. So I've had a few issues where like it just tells me it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like today with my computer, and I just text him. He's like, give me an hour and it'll be fixed. So I think I started it and it's called Historically Hockey. I went with that name because I like talking about hockey, but if you can't do about all of the nerd shit on my walls,
right?
I like to talk about other things. So like last summer, I just randomly wrote the Fast and the Furious movies because I'd never seen them before. And I'm like, how do I not watch these? But yeah, he made it, like got it set up for me. So I think the first thing I published was on that site was my review I was at the first Vegas game.
Oh, cool.
Like their regular season home opener. I was there for. And I was like, well, that works. That's a good way to kick off this website. So I guess this will be the 4th year writing for it.
Wow, that's awesome. How do you find the experience writing for yourself for your own website versus working with other people and that sort of thing? Because I always hear just in podcasts when I listen to writers, that is one of the biggest things you hear is that learning that relationship of how you write and how you write within other systems of writing. And some people can work awesome within those, with editors and people changing some things up and giving input. And then some people just don't work with it. How did you find that transition? Because sounds like you've done a little bit of both.
I never really had any issue like writing for someone else because it was like, I think I've gotten better at the last couple of years, but I've always been bad at being like a self-editor. And I know part of that goes back to like when I was in university, I took history. I was writing 10-page term papers all the time.
Right.
If that 10-page term paper was due on December 1st at noon, I was finishing it at 11:55 a.m. December 1st.
Yep.
And running at light speed across campus to hand it.
That's funny. Did you ever have this experience where you're handing something into one of the bins while the TA is opening the bins to take them out and like do it right at midnight? Because I definitely did that a couple times in my career.
The closest I ever came to doing that one was my first year. My philosophy prof had a rule where if the paper was due on Friday, it was due by the end of class.
Oh,
like so he gave you like hour buffer period.
Right.
I was up to like 4 or 5 a.m. finishing the paper. I was like, I'll sleep for 3-4 hours. Like the class is at 10. I woke up at, I think it was 10:52 or 10:53. So I technically had to be there for like, say 11 to get it into the TA, or I guess it would have been like 11:42 because class ended at 10:50.
Yeah.
This is when I was on 6. I somehow was still stupid enough to go to the bathroom first. And I ran from 6 Henday all the way to Tory Turtle.
Oh, Tory Turtle too. That's a good hike.
Burst in the class, handed it to my TA, turned around, walked back. And I remember I got back onto the lounge and I could feel both sides of my throat, just the pulse in my heart was just doing this. I sat there for 2 hours. I'm like, I almost
just wired. Yeah.
It was like the first year paranoia of like, oh my God, what happens if this doesn't get in on time? And
oh, I remember that. But the funny thing is that paranoia really helps you because like when I had that in first year, it was all so new and I was so scared of like messing up and all this stuff. And, coming from high school where my parents are beating down my neck all the time if I didn't do something, to university where you don't really realize at the very start that no one really cares what you do or don't do. And then second year, third year, fourth year, progressively, it was like going to less classes, finding the ways around handing things in, getting extensions. You learn how to work the system a little bit. So I think that first year paranoia definitely serves a purpose.
My running joke I had my last semester in Lister was my weekend ended at 1:45 Tuesday afternoon, and my weekend began at 5:00 Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
One class out of 5.
That sounds like
it was a 400 level class with 15 other people, and he took attendance. I was like that, and like it was the one prof I really liked, so I'm like, I'm gonna go to his class, whatever.
That's that was the big thing. It was if it was a professor that I liked or subject matter that I really enjoyed, I would go, which was very rare. But like, and then at the start, it was the class that had attendance marks to go to those. But even at the end, there were some classes I didn't go to that had attendance marks. So I was like, I'm just gonna get, I just know I need to get another 10% to pass, like knowing that I'm going to lose that 10% on attendance or whatever partial marks I got for the couple classes I did go to at the start usually. But good times. Hey, do you miss it at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like working.
Yeah. Who does?
I really don't.
Yeah.
And it's not even like, oh, if I had a job I really liked, like even to an extent with the writing, like I don't picture any job where I'm like, oh, I could do that. So it's just like every day I'm like, okay, I just got to get to 6:00 and then I can go do other stuff. Where like, at least with school, it was learning different things, like the involvement with like teams, all that jazz, and like being able to do stuff. Even I guess right after I graduated and I was unemployed, like I did a bunch of volunteering with the SU.
Yeah.
And just doing stuff like that where I was like more involved, where now it's like, and it was also the social aspect of being able to see people where now, even before all this happened last year, I feel like I see like the same 4 people all the time.
Same here. Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I find that the school part I don't miss as much. I was pretty happy to get out of that, but definitely that Lister life and being able to have your own little space where you can be by yourself and have complete isolation in your little cell block room that you have there. But then also, if you did want a little bit of interaction, you could walk down to the Mar, to the caf, and just have all these people around and just strike up conversations and get a little bit of that social aspect. But then if you had too much of that, you always could retreat back to your little space and you had so many people around. I miss that so much. Like same thing, just seeing those same people every day. Like even pre-pandemic is just, you go to work, you go to the gym, you go home. You go to work, you go to the gym, you go home. Since I moved up here to Grand Prairie, I think it'd be a little bit different if I was in Slave Lake or Edmonton or where most of my friends were. But it's just one of those things where, it definitely makes you appreciate what we had in those times. And I feel like Lister was such a special place, and it was so hard to appreciate it while you're there because you don't realize how special it is. It's just normal. It's just what you're doing at that time. And then you leave and like, man, that was awesome. Can we go back to that? Can I do another 2 years there or what?
And so like, I feel like I ended up appreciating it quite a bit by like my third year. And as someone else who grew up in the north, I grew up really far north.
Oh yeah, where are you from, Zach?
I grew up in High Level.
Oh, High Level! Wow, I know High Level well. Well, not well. I'm sure well enough. I've been up there quite a few times.
I'm sorry.
It's a good place. It's good people.
But like, so, and for me, it was just like the minute school ended, Dad would come pick me up. We drive home. And then I would spend all summer seeing all my friends from university posting stuff. I'm like going camping together and all that stuff. And I'm just like, is it September yet? Like,
yeah. I need to get back into civilization here. Yeah.
I didn't get to interact with any of my university friends until like during the summer, until I think just before my 4th year.
Wow.
I went on one camping trip.
Wow.
And that was it.
Ooh.
So like, I was just like, and like part of that, and I kind of had that when I was in high school too. Like all my friends lived out of town and didn't have cars, and I lived in town and didn't have a car. So it was like the minute high school ended, I didn't see anybody for 2 months.
Yeah.
So it was like like even coming to Lister, I was like, once I had like my core of friends, I was like, just please don't leave me. I only get you for like 9 months.
Yeah. Oh man. But that also makes you make the most of those 9 months when you know you're going to be leaving them all, right? Like that was very similar to me, but in Slave Lake, it was almost that for me, but a slow burn because I left university or left high school and had all these friends and stuff. And then I went to school for a year. They went and did whatever they did for a year, and you come back and it's almost the same, but a little different. They've changed a bit. I've changed a bit. And they do a little bit of different things. I do a little bit of different things. And you can still have that camaraderie, and the real close friends is always still there. But then each consecutive summer, it's a little bit different. And then when I graduated and went back, and it was like, oh man, like my core friends are still very much the same, but the groups have changed, the dynamics have changed, what they do, like it was, and it was still really fun stuff that they were doing, just wasn't as much matching up with what I did. And I definitely felt that. And that was one of those times where that first couple months of being back in Slave Lake after 4 years of Lister was, and knowing that I didn't have that, it doesn't matter because in 2 months I'm going back there. It's like, oh no, that's done forever. Now you're back here and figure it out kind of thing. And I was like, oh man, like I should have had more fun there. I don't know if that's physically possible for me to have more fun than what I had in those 4 years, because I really maximized that. I think I'm really proud of what kind of work I put in on the fun scale in that 4 years. But, even saying that, I still don't think I appreciated it enough because of how awesome it was. Right. And just, dodgeball and all that stuff and all the going to Dukes and having everybody around. Oh, so many ways. It's just a special place.
Yes.
But I mean, that kind of covers Listener and dodgeball. But I mean, we're here to talk some hockey, and playoffs are around the corner. When do they start? Do they start tomorrow or on Wednesday? Today?
Yeah.
But they're just starting it even with regular season games. So is that Boston game tonight, a playoff game?
Yes.
Holy shit. I didn't know that. Okay. Well, now I'm going to double screen with playoff hockey and UFC tonight. This is going to be tough.
Yes. Because the NHL is stupid. I've seen tons of other podcasts talk about it and like people on Twitter, but like this league does everything it can do to make you not like them.
Put 9 games all at 8:00?
Yeah. Like just like that, but like the 3 games that are remaining between Calgary and Vancouver literally do not matter. Like they matter for contracts and
bonuses and
TV stuff, but they have no influence on the standings. So in theory, Montreal, Toronto could be going on right now. Edmonton, Winnipeg could be going on right now. Mm-hmm. What they've done is they've moved the Calgary games to the afternoon so they can have their playoff evenings.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And so like Wednesday, the Flames Canucks play their last game. It's on at like 2:30 or 3:30. It's going to end, and then Montreal plays.
Wow.
And it's like, why don't you just move them up a bit?
It's tough because it is so difficult to run a league like that. But there's sometimes they do things that seem so obvious and they're so easily available solutions that are better right there for the taking. And like people are talking about it right on podcasts. And you're like, how is this happening? Like what kind of behind the scenes mechanics are holding us back from being optimized here? And it's got to be money. It's got to be certain things. It's got to be contracts, right? Like certain, like you say, contracts with players, contracts with TV, with networks and all this stuff. Like it's interesting what all goes in behind it. And I wish there's more transparency with some of that stuff too, because I feel like the frustration as a fan, if you're a really in-depth fan, like I wouldn't even consider myself this with hockey. I really love hockey. I've loved hockey all my life, but I'm not, like this year, I watched maybe 3 games that weren't in the North Division. I watched almost every North Division game this year because that was just one of the coolest things I've ever seen, just to see all that Canadian hockey. And I'm curious to see your take on it. But like, I didn't watch almost any of those matchups. Like if there was something really spicy going on, if like when Wilson took out Panarin there and that next game, like obviously I'm going to watch that one, but it kind of sucked me out. But where I see this is with the UFC. I am that kind of fan. I never miss anything. I watch all the press conferences, all the podcasts, everything, right? Which is kind of transition because that used to be hockey. Now UFC is kind of taking that point. But what I really like about it and what I think is pushing me more that way is there's so much more. There's not a ton of transparency in the UFC either. Like all businesses at a certain point, transparency hurts them and hurts their bottom line. But I don't know if it's just because they're a younger sport and there's not as much tradition and historical precedent there, but they're way more transparent about why they do things and why they're making these decisions. And if, there's reporters that will ask Dana White about these things and he has to answer it in that moment. It feels like with hockey, it's just kind of like, we put 8 games out on 9 o'clock because that's what we felt like, and probably has some contractual stuff behind it. But I feel like it frustrates a fan. And if you could hear like, we want to spread these games out, but to match this, and this, and to honor this deal and this deal, we have to do it this way. And to me as a fan, all right, at least you give me a reason. But just to say like, you guys are going to watch this, whether we do it well or don't, just eat it up. Like just here, I'm just going to spoon it to you. I just hate that as a fan because I just want to be involved in it and to know why those decision makings. I wonder what you think about that.
I mean, it's kind of, I feel like it's a similar situation to the way the teams are run. I think it was Mark Spector that coined it, but it was the 200 trusted hockey men.
Yeah.
Where this is the way they did in 1955. This is the way we're going to do it now. And you're going to like it. And it's just like, well, and it's this awkward thing that happens with just I feel like everything in hockey, people will be like, we need something new. And then someone will try something new and they instantly kill it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm probably the minority, but I deeply miss George Stroumboulopoulos on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah.
Because I always liked him. I thought he was probably miscast, but he's always been a very good interview. Like, he's one of the few people that get Gary Bettman to open up, and it's like, we complain about hockey players not having personality, and we have this guy who can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, everyone would be like, oh, he's just the music guy. And it's like, yeah, but he started in sports radio.
Right.
It wasn't like Much Music just plucked him off the street and like, you look like a punk rocker. Here's a microphone. Sportsnet did all those new camera angles they tried that year. Mm-hmm. And there are people like, no, we can't do that. And I was like, okay. And they went back to the same system we've been using since TV was started, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I was going to say, I don't remember, I'm trying to think back to some of those old Oiler games. Yeah. Seems like it's pretty much the same angles they used. Yeah.
I don't think like the primary, like they've added angles, but like the primary, like left to right shooting, that hasn't changed since they started broadcasting hockey games.
It's and then they added that this must be within the last couple of years, that behind the net cam. And I feel like it is so good in certain situations, but they always misuse it and stay on it too long. And it really makes it, it's just, I'm curious what you think about this. I contend, and I've said this to some people before, that the reason it's so tough is because we're not used to this angle, and it's hard to track because we're not used to watching the game on TV from this angle. 100%. And I feel like it feels like they do it, they don't know how to use it, what the right places are. That's A. B, the fan, myself, is not used to tracking the puck from this angle. And then they just kill it. I haven't seen it in a long time. It seems like they randomly bring it in where I haven't seen that angle for months. And then somehow maybe it's just going to different barns. Maybe only some arenas have that angle. Now that I think about it, that would make more sense, but it feels like there's something there. And I like the creativity of it. But again, it seems like they go, oh, let's try this. Oh, people don't like it. Okay, we're going to pull it back. But it's like, oh no, I think there was something there. Like maybe there's not, maybe there is, but we didn't try it enough. We didn't give it enough of a chance to really see what we had there. And I feel like that is almost what you're pointing to with all these issues, or not even issues, but all these things that the NHL has tried and what kind of holds it back from expanding and getting new and trying new things.
Yeah. Like I said, like all those changes that Sportsnet brought in, they then used those as like a scapegoat for why everything went wrong that year. And like, cause that was the year that none of the Canadian teams made the playoffs.
Right.
And it's like, you're like, well, look at our ratings when the trash. I was like, okay. But you take a step back and you're like, okay, what is the main driver of ratings in Canada? People don't like to hear it, but it's the Maple Leafs. That was the year the Maple Leafs were tanking for Matthews. They were running out scrub guys that like had no business playing hockey because they were specifically going in the can. Yeah. No one's going to stick around and watch that. No. It's like say the 2009 Oilers when they were tanking for Hall. And it's like, I remember sitting in the Lister Lounge and someone being like, I'm literally watching the worst Oilers team ever. Yeah. And they would just leave the room. Like, I can't watch this team. You're not going to tune in and you spend your Saturday nights watching a garbage team. That sounds like my whole career being an Oilers fan until about 2015. I moved to Edmonton. I applied to the U of A because the Oilers had just made the Stanley Cup Finals. And I went, maybe I can see a playoff game. Tough. Boy, did that backfire. Yeah. But yeah, and Sportsnet panicked and they brought back Ron McLean. They did all that. Even look at the World Cup in 2016. There was all the old timers being like, no one ever grew up wanting to play for North America. And it's like, okay, now go talk to the 10-year-old wearing the North America jersey. They probably are dreaming of one day playing for North America. That North America thing they did was the coolest shit I've seen in hockey, which I think is also what made it cool was that we never get to see that type of cool shit in hockey. But yeah, I love that. I thought that was the coolest thing. And especially now to keep doing that, because what we're seeing with Connor Bedard and these guys coming up, because these kids that have this immense skill, but it took them a long time to fall into a system that could maximize that skill. But now these strength and performance and mental coaches and video review, and there's so much information disseminated out there for these young kids. That's what creates these Connor Bedards and that Russian cat that's doing the same thing over across the pond. And we're going to see more of these, where I think if you tried to do that Team America idea, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the dominance of the older players in the league would have made that Team North America just not really that exciting to watch. But with the skill and the type of players that are coming out at that young of age, where you can put an age cap on it and put out the young guns for all of North America, that is just the coolest idea. And the Team Europe too. I love that. I
I don't know.
So,
I was a big fan.
A couple notes on that.
Yeah.
One, the other thing you couldn't do it 30 years ago was like, you go look at stuff written in like the 90s, it was Americans still can't play hockey. There was still that like,
right.
Am I using the right term here? Jingoistic approach to it. Like I've got a book here called The Red Line, which is about the first season the Russians came over.
Okay.
And it's hilarious to read because all the teams that didn't have Russians on them were complaining that Russians were coming, taking their jobs. But then the teams with Russians were like, by the end of the year, were like, no, they're great guys. Like, we love them. And it's like, oh, what do you know? You get a talented player. Who cares? I cannot express how deeply I regret not getting a North America jersey. I have the Europe one, and I just couldn't afford it at the time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't justify it. And then every time I see one, I'm just like,
they were just so slick too.
Oh man, it was perfect.
Yeah. And that team was perfect for it. Just like the era that year was just, everything fell into place to have that. And you had the players, you had the stars, like just to make it that exciting that they were taking games off and it was that competitive. Oh, that was so cool. Man, I forgot all about that till you brought that up. Like I had completely forgot that even happened. Oh, that's good stuff. That is good stuff. Something I was thinking about on the car ride back to GP today was I was kind of trying to formulate my ideas of these matchups and what I thought going into the playoffs. And I was thinking, like, what makes it so hard to understand, to make a guess as what's going to happen in the playoffs? Because what I've seen in these last, probably since Connor McDavid came in, if I'm honest, that's probably when I watched, like my hockey watching went up, probably threefold. And then of that, I was actually watching a whole game, not like watching the first two periods, getting so mad at the other that I turned it off, and seeing. And then I think also another piece of this was seeing or listening to Spit and Chicklets and understanding the difference between regular season and playoff hockey. I always could see the difference and I knew and I got excited for it, but you couldn't really understand what was going on with them and what went into amping yourself up to playoffs, the type of hockey you're playing. And that's what's so interesting to me is that difference between regular season and playoffs. But then you add on to that this layer of the evolution that we're seeing in hockey over the last, let's say 5 years. It seems like maybe even 10, but just, it seems like almost where it used to turn over almost on like a decade, like there'd be kind of a new style of hockey. It's speed, it's big, it's this, but it was kind of slower moving. It seems like now it almost changes every year. It seems like every playoffs is different or every regular season is different. And it seems to be going more towards speed. And this is what you need. You need speed. You don't need those big guys anymore. And then a team like Toronto gets beat the shit out of it in playoffs every year and can't make it out of the first round. So then people are thinking, oh, do you need it to be, big guys? But it seems like things are changing at such a rapid pace, both regular season and playoffs, that always difficult decision to make of how you want to build a playoff team is even made more difficult because of the evolution of it. And I'm curious to you, what do you think this playoffs, what is that factor going to be? Do you think it's speed? Do you think it's the big? Do you think it's the grit? Like what do you think it's going to be for this year? And I don't think any of us, if we knew this, we'd have a crystal ball somewhere and we'd be sitting on a beach, but I'm curious what your take is.
So the first thing that with that, part of it's, there's the copycat every year where like whoever wins, teams copy. But going back to that 200 trusted hockey man, there's always this weird thing where they focus. Like I find a lot of people end up focusing on the wrong part of teams. Like if I say like the 2011 Bruins, you think of these big bruising monsters, and then everyone ignores they had like David Krejci and like Nathan Horton and Patrice Bergeron, good hockey players, or like you hear two-way
players, and
like you hear about the Ducks in 06, 07, like, oh, they were big and mean and tough. And it's like, okay, they also had Chris Pronger and Scott Niedermayer, two of the greatest defensemen of all time, and they had Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf. It's like there's this like infatuation, like, well, we don't have like the generational talent or like the top 6 stars, like, but we do have 3 guys that would have fit on that team's bottom line. So let's make our entire roster like that. But I would say just kind of the way the teams have gone this year, it's got to be like just skill and speed again.
Yeah,
because like Vegas just makes you look stupid. Colorado, same thing. Toronto, as much as people like to hate them, it's the same thing. Their top 6 guys are they're pure talent.
And now they added in some grit too, like with Simmons and Foligno. I'm so curious to see them because I always for the last 5 years, I've just always said, let's see them in the playoffs. Let's see them in the playoffs. They're going to be weak. They're going to get pushed around and it's not going to go well. And then they added Simmons. I was like, well, that's a start. Like that's probably the kind of player you need. And then they added Foligno. I was like, oh, that is exactly what they need. And now I'm really curious.
It's the other thing too with like Foligno that's interesting, and to next also with Riley Nash that they got from Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Both those guys played in Columbus last year.
Yeah.
Riley Nash played on the Bruins last time the Bruins beat the Leafs. So it's like they have the keys to what's wrong. There's a part of me that always feels bad for the Leafs. And I hate saying that as a but I've also realized like in the last 5-6 years, like I'm still a Canadiens fan, but I feel like I've become hockey fan first, Canadian fan second.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Leafs consistently just have something go catastrophically wrong in the playoffs.
Kadri.
Well, like that last year against Columbus, they had like a 2% shooting percentage at 5-on-5, and it's like that's impossible.
It actually is impossible. Like, when is the last time we saw that ever? Like over a 7-game sprint, like that guy's at 2% shooting percentage.
Like when you have like Matthews and Marner and all them, like I think I've in my because after a team gets eliminated, I'll usually write a piece being like, what went wrong? Yeah. And I think this is literally what I wrote for Toronto. I was like, this could never happen again. Play games another 1,000 times. This situation is never going to happen again.
Yeah.
Frederik Andersen has a meltdown in game 1, puts them behind the 8 ball. Was it the last time they blew a game 7 against the Bruins? It was like 3 of their defensemen forgot how to pass a puck. And then their goaltender has a meltdown with 20 minutes to go. And it's just like, how do you keep finding new ways to just implode besides saying it's Toronto?
Exactly. And I found like for myself, selfishly, same thing. I always feel bad for Toronto, but I never feel bad for Toronto fans. That is how I separate out in my head. Is I feel bad for this team and this organization, but the fans, I've heard way too much for you over the years. And it seems like, so I work for, a company, but it's underneath of Suncor. So every year we go to this big conference somewhere in Canada and everybody sees each other and all the head offices are in Toronto. So all the bigwigs with the company are all diehard Toronto fans. So usually when we go to this conference every night, they're, if we go out to some thing, they're always making sure that there's TVs and we can see playoff hockey there. Usually the Oilers aren't involved in that, so it doesn't affect me that much. So I have to find other ways to entertain myself. So what that turned into was me watching all the Toronto series and watching Boston absolutely break their hearts every year. And I can't outwardly be celebratory of that because that would make me a bad person. But inside, I am laughing my dick off the entire time when they're sitting there with their head in their hands. It's just like, yes, this is what you deserve, Toronto fans. And I feel like that just encapsulates my feeling around Toronto, even though I think they're an amazing team and really should win that North Division quite easily if things go to plan, which we know playoff hockey shit never goes to plan, and I can't wait to see it.
A quick note similar to your conference, I think you should appreciate this. So a close personal friend of mine, very big Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
Yeah.
He got married 2 years ago. He wore Bab socks during the wedding. He had the jersey stitched inside the jacket. When him and his bride, like after the ceremony, walked down the aisle, it was the Leafs goal song.
Wow.
He realized it was the goal song and she liked it. She went, let's go with that one. And like, I remember being at the back of the
snuck one in for the big guys.
Like, I think I yelled at him, "You're a loser." But
that's funny.
Where it was at, they had the Leafs game on and it was the beginning of the season. And it was I don't know if you would have remember it, but I think it was Kasperi Kapanen threw his stick at one of the Montreal Canadiens and got a penalty.
Got a penalty, yeah.
Shot. Montreal
penalty shot. Was he on a breakaway when he threw his stick?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
And Montreal was down like 4-1 at one point in this game. And like that ended up being the tying goal. It goes to overtime and Montreal wins. So, like after during the reception or whatever, I walked up and was like, how's it feel? The Leafs gave you like the most quintessential Leafs gift for your wedding. And he's like, thank you. I'm aware. And just like walked.
Oh, that's funny. Oh man. Well, I think we might as well hop right into the series matchups. Like I said, mea culpa, didn't watch too much American hockey. So all of my insights on these American matchups are probably going to be from last year. And you might have to educate me if I'm way off on any of my takes because I did not catch very many American games this year.
I will do my best.
All right.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start? Here's maybe a way I can start it. What is the most interesting matchup to you of all of them?
I'm trying to think now because my brain's strong.
I have them in front of me. If you need a repeat, I could read through them if that'll kickstart?
I guess on a personal level, Montreal, Toronto.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, let's start there, because that's very interesting to me, because so well acquainted watching my Oilers play both of them all year. I'm well acquainted with their teams like I've never been before, right? Like Toronto a little bit, but definitely Montreal. Yeah. Usually pretty nothing me. They're so far from the Oilers, and they're not Toronto that just has so much gravity. And to watch what that team is this year, I don't know how big of a change that was for Montreal this year compared to years past, but Josh Anderson and having that back end that you guys got, like they're big, they're mean, but your forwards are fast. Nick Suzuki, he's pretty good, and now seeing Caulfield come in there. How different do you think Montreal was this year over last year?
I've had a love-hate relationship with the Canadiens the entire year. I saw a post like a month ago where it's 90% of being a hockey fan is just hating your own team. And I was like, this is me right now.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I was hoping Montreal would make the bubble last year because I wanted to hate it. And I was like, they're going to do something stupid. And then they beat the Penguins. And I was like, there we go.
Yeah.
And I knew it was the thing of, they were like, well, we did this 5-game sample size must be us, not the 70 games we played beforehand where we were terrible. And they went out, they bought, like, everyone's been raving with Josh Anderson. He only has like 2 or 3 more points than Max Domi, and he's being paid like twice as much. I do like him. He's fast. The first game he played this year, he threw a hit on Brody, and I text my dad. I'm like, it is very strange seeing a large Montreal forward that can actually play hockey.
I think that was the biggest thing of seeing him out there. It was just so odd to see a guy in a Montreal jersey playing like Josh Anderson plays. And when the Oilers matched up with him, and the way his physical presence on that forecheck absolutely threw the Oilers for a loop. And I think he was probably the first 2 wins that Montreal had against Edmonton was almost just him being that disruptive. No, your defense was shutting us down, but like, it's just so out of character for them. It's interesting. Is that a direction you're happy about, or do you think it was just an overpayment, like a good direction, but maybe they could have found a better fit for it? Or do you think, that's just, it's so hard to find those guys that you have to pay them that much, like guys that are big and physical and can still play, like the Wilsons of the world, the Andersons, the Reeves, right? Those guys are worth so much money because they're so hard to find. And do you think that's just the reality of it, or do you think they could have found a better way to make it happen?
I feel like they probably could have found a better way to make it happen. I do think it was a bit of an overpay, and that's a very long contract for a guy that missed a season, and power forwards tend to be dead by the time they're 32. I mean,
right.
Look at Milan Lucic. He literally fell off a cliff.
Yeah, he did. Well aware.
In LA. I still can't believe Montreal almost signed him, but like, he had one semi-decent year in Edmonton.
Tied to McDavid too. Like, that was the biggest piece of it. Like, he did have a good season. Don't get me wrong. And when Lucic was an Oiler, I loved him, right? Okay, maybe not. I had some issues with him after. Like, definitely that second year is just I think my issue was less with Lucic and more with the Oilers for how they played Lucic, because it felt like they spent so much money and they wanted it to work so bad that they were just shoehorning him into places he shouldn't have been, and it affected us. And we would lose games purely on how they were playing Lucic, which isn't his fault. Like, you can't take a guy like that and just expect him to do things he can't do, right? Like, you can mismanage your players and it's not their fault. But I felt like, and I almost felt bad for him, because it's like, man, you're being put into positions that you're set up to fail. And now this whole fan base is on you and just tearing at you. And you're this awesome player and awesome guy. By all accounts, he's great in the room. Everybody loves him. But like, it's like, man, like, how are we falling for this? Like, how is the egos of these guys that made this deal allowing us the organization to suffer, the team to suffer, right? Like that just drove me nuts.
It was the old boys club having hallucinations of 27 playing beside 99 again.
Exactly. That's all it was, like, really. And that is, you think, oh, there's got to be more to it than that. Like, that when we're talking this much money and this big of organizations, it can't be that stupid, but it is. And like, the more you watch hockey and the more you watch this, you realize that these GMs and these guys that make all this money, at the end of the day, they're still people, and they still have the same egos and the same problems all of us suffer with. They're suffering with too. And that's another thing that I feel like is really interesting with Chicklets, is to get more insight into that sort of stuff. And it makes it so much more interesting to see these decisions that are being made and to see the pressure that these guys are under to perform. While we're on that, I'm curious, as a Montreal fan, what are your thoughts with Bergevin? Because for me, again, pretty far away from Montreal, haven't seen much, but from afar, of watching the moves he's made since he got in that position, I felt like they've been pretty good, but now I'm hearing that he's kind of on the hot seat. And if they don't, if they don't pull out a playoff win this season, he might be gone. What do you think of his tenure? Do you think he's had too much of a shot? Do you think they should give him more time? What's your thoughts?
He is the heart of my love-hate relationship.
Yes, I got right in there.
I inadvertently nearly body checked him at the Bell Center like 3 years ago.
Oh boy, that would have been good for you.
There's a part in the kind of, because it was like me and I went to a game in Montreal. We did the tour. Yeah. And we're up in like the rafters where like the press boxes are. Mm-hmm. And we're like this narrow section. I hear someone go, "Oh, just coming by." And I step away and I see this like very fancy suit go by.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, whatever. And then someone else in the group was like, "Oh, Mr. Bergevin." And like, cause he like went right behind me. Like I felt like the wind go.
Yeah.
And like the little devil on my shoulder was like, "You should have put the hip into him for like,
yeah. Should have gave him a little shot
about the Subban trade." But the part of the reason he's on the hot seat and this year has kind of become like do or die for him. He's been the GM for like 10 years.
Has he?
The first draft that he oversaw was the Yakupov draft.
Oh, wow. Really? For some reason, I had him in my head that he's only been there for like 3 years.
No. So like, I guess like 8 years then I think he's been there.
Wow. Who was the GM before Bergevin?
I think it was Pierre Dorian.
Oh, right. Holy man.
He was only like an intern. He was only there for like a year after Bob Gainey.
Bob Gainey. That's who I was thinking. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that maybe changes my decision because I kind of thought like, man, like he seems like the last couple of years since I've been paying attention, maybe, oh, this is what it is. I don't think I'd ever even heard of Bergevin until I started listening to Spit and Chicklets. And then he was such a character and I started seeing who he was that it feels like I've only, seen him for like 3 or 4 years, but I think I've only been listening to Chicklets for 3 or 4 years. And that's what brought him into my mind. That's maybe what it is. So now saying that, I think that changed my mind. If he's at 8 years at the helm and this is in that the last 8 years of Montreal teams is what I have to judge him by, maybe a little bit more on the hot seat. Maybe that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. And like he's on his 3rd coach, I think, maybe his 4th one. I can't remember for sure. He like the furthest he's made it in the playoffs is arguably with a roster he inherited from Gainey, which was that 2014 run where they lost the Rangers.
Right.
All of like his big power moves for the most like haven't worked out. Mm-hmm. Like he made the Weber trade for Subban. So I guess technically he has won it, but that's only going to look worse and worse. Cause like, I think Subban's going to have a weird bounce back where like his reputation go through the roof again because he's not going to be being paid $9 million in a year.
That is true. Yeah, that always helps. And people don't understand what that can take off of a guy too and allow him just to play free, right? When you're making $9 million and there's so much hate on you and you need to be this person that for whatever reason, that's just too much for you to have that lifted off and then to have that free slate to kind of go and play free and just have fun out there. I think that's going to make a big effect, even on top of all the hate that he's getting.
Well, like I think Subban, this will be a deep cut that you'll appreciate. He's going to become Marc-Andre Bergeron.
My favorite fucking Oiler. How did you pull that name? I love Marc-Andre Bergeron. Oh, he was my favorite. Me and my dad loved him because me and my dad, how we liked hockey, and he instilled this in me when I played hockey was goals are great, assists are great, but fucking hits are awesome, right? And the way Marc-Andre Bergeron, sorry, blasphemy, used to throw that hip check. Oh my God, did that get us out of our seat? And that slap shot when he hit, who did he hit in the face and almost knocked him on his ass? Was that Turco or Tugnut?
I have no idea.
Did you see that? But okay, after this, you got to look up Marc-Andre Bergeron hits goalie in the face. I can't remember. It was against Dallas. It was maybe Tugnut or Turco or whoever it was back in the day. He squares up from the blue line, hits him in the face so hard you see him just like dunk. Just timber back for like 3 second fall back. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh, I love Bergeron. Sorry, that was a complete tangent.
I've only seen that happen once that I can think of, and it was when I was a kid. I think it was Bill Ranford was playing for the Capitals, and he took a slap shot right between the eyes and just like straight down.
Yeah, that's very much what it was. Yeah.
But so I know.
Sorry, didn't mean to take off your cut.
Thing,
yeah,
the reason I know him is when Montreal beat the Capitals and the Penguins in 2010.
Yeah.
In like the Halak year, Montreal paid like $500,000. They got him. They're like, you were only playing power play minutes. That was it. Like they would use him as the 13th center. Like he was, or forward. He would literally be just on the bench and the power play, send him over the boards and he'd score. Because he had the slap shot from hell, basically.
How Justin Schultz should have been played for the Oilers and how they should have built him up instead of trying to put him in a position he was never going to succeed in.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think Subban's going to be the same way. Like, he's going to become a specialty player,
Mhm.
and he can just play his game and just take giant slap shots and put them through people.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that I hadn't even thought of that, but I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. How much is left on his contract? His big one.
Subban is a free agent after next summer.
Oh, not this summer, next summer. So he's got one more year. Okay. Yeah, oh, that's gonna be interesting.
Weber will be a free agent. I'll be staring down my 40s.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Which is a terrifying thought. So like with the Bergevin thing, like that's where like he made that trade. The Pacioretty deal, he backed into a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, because when that trade happened, I was like, I can't believe we made that deal. Like everyone was dunking on Thomas Tatar. The like Suzuki's 2-3 years away, and then he went, actually, no, I'm here now.
Yeah.
What Bergevin's always been really good at is doing like little moves and like buying people low. So like I remember 2014, he got Thomas Vanek for, I think his name was Simon Kohlberg, and a second round pick.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. Montreal got Jeff Petrie for 2 seconds.
Salty about that one a little bit.
Thank you, by the way. But like he always is good on those. It's when he starts getting like these big ideas where it's just like, please don't. And then doesn't.
The blockbuster trade is not his forte, you're saying.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
So he does have, the one thing he does have going for him is confidence. Like when Montreal hired Claude Julien, they were first in their division and they fired their head coach.
Yeah.
Because they went, there's a better option out there. We'll take him.
I was blown away by that. When they made that move, that was one of the ones where I was like, what is going on there? Like, I just, first in the video, like, unless there was, and they always have more information than the public has, and maybe something was going on in that room where that move needed to happen and it was going to sour eventually and it was just the team. But you better hope that's the move, because that is a bold play. First in the division, changing your coach. Oh my God.
I hated Therrien. And when that deal happened, my buddy just texted me Happy Valentine's Day and sent me a link. And it was like, especially at that time, Montreal had an issue between Pacioretty and Subban. And so it was like, pick your defenseman or your winger.
Yeah.
They picked Pacioretty. And then they're like, well, actually, it was an issue between the player and the coach and Subban. So we picked the coach, but also we traded the winger and we didn't want the coach anymore. So now we have nothing.
Yeah. And Michel Therrien's going to have issues with half your guys at least. Right. Like that's just how he apparently, I mean, I don't know the guy, but from what I hear, he's not the easiest guy to work with. Right. And I think anybody that listens to any hockey podcast has probably heard a story or two about Therrien in their day. Oh man, I forgot that's who it was that went out. Oh, interesting. So having said all that, this team that the so aptly named Burger Van has created, how do you think it matches up with Toronto? I'm curious. First off, I got to ask you, how is Montreal coming in with all the injuries? Is Gallagher back? Is Weber going to play? Because that was my big concern. Because I always thought because I was looking at it as if the Edmonton was all year. I thought Edmonton and Montreal were going to match up. I just had a feeling. I was like, shit, because they have our number a little bit. The way they're structured with that decor doesn't really match up well with our play style. But then with all those injuries, I was thinking, fuck, give us Montreal. We'll play them. We'll play them without Gallagher and Weber and all those guys. But how is that going to shake out? Who are they going to have, and how do you think it's going to play out?
So I believe Sportsnet was mentioning today, one of their reporters, that Gallagher was practicing in a contact jersey.
Okay.
So he's probably ready to go for game one. Other comments were being made from similar, like Sportsnet. I want to say it was Eric Engels. I could be wrong, that I saw. I was just doom scrolling. Weber wasn't on the ice, but everything points towards him being back.
That's what I had heard too. Yeah.
I don't know about Price. He hasn't been seen in a while, but it could be they're holding him out to the playoffs.
What a funky incident too for him to be out. Like I thought that was a nothing play. I shouldn't say. I heard it on the radio at first, but didn't see. But when I watched the replay, it didn't seem that bad. And then when he didn't play next game, and then oh man, he's out long term. Like that is worrisome. Hey,
it is. The way he was playing this year, I was just like, just go get better, please.
Yeah.
Be fine. So yeah, in theory, he'll be back. The one alarming thing is apparently because they're bringing all these guys back, Caulfield's not going to be in the lineup for game one.
He's like your best player.
I'm aware. Supposedly, I don't know how much.
Is it cap stuff or?
There's no cap in the playoff.
That's what I'm just trying to wrap my head around. So what is the situation like who's going in that Caulfield's coming out? Like,
I have no idea. And it could just be like, again,
rumor mill, like, maybe let's hope that's not happening.
I saw it and I was like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to, no. Because like Caulfield has been the most excited about Montreal prospect in a decade for good reason. So how they match up with the Leafs, my Leaf fan friends that are like, take two. My buddies that are Leaf fans, like they're terrified of Montreal because they're the one that matches up the best with us, and it's because of that. Like the D-men play that big.
Exactly. The way they play against the Oilers is exactly how they have to play against Toronto if they want to win that series.
And like Montreal does have they're this weird thing where none of their lines are like super amazing, but they've got guys and all of them you're like, oh yeah, no, that's kind of scary.
And they can roll. And then when that gets rolled, I love teams like that. Like maybe the last year they had Buffalo, or maybe the year after with Winnipeg, when they had those four lines that could roll and were energy and would just build. And it was like, I don't care if it's line 1 or line 4 that's coming out. This is going to suck every fucking shift. And it was so exciting to watch because they could just send them. And I was like, I can't wait until ever the Oilers have a team like that where I can just be excited about every line. You don't have one line that has Lucic on it where it's like, no. You just sit there watching, covering your eyes for a minute 30 and hoping to get a change. Yeah. That's funny. Sorry, go on.
No worries. Like, yeah. So, and like the biggest thing I think for Montreal to beat the Leafs is Philip Deneau is going to need to have several horseshoes up his ass.
Yeah.
He's very good, but his job is going to be, and that's if he's healthy. I'm pretty sure he is, but
right. That's a big question mark there too.
There may have been some lingering issues down the stretch, but like he is going to see a lot of 34 presumably. And Austin Matthews is currently playing at a level where it's just lol, I'm scoring.
Yeah.
I've never seen someone look so bored scoring a goal.
The only, I love that tape because I feel like there's always something different. Like the way we've seen goal scorers in the past, like Ovechkin and stuff, it's almost those goal scorers that just love to score goals always have that, like, it seems like those guys that hit the 50 every year have that excitement about scoring. Like Ovechkin, he has so many fucking goals. He doesn't know what to do with them, but he still gets fired up like it's his first goal every time. Where Matthews just, whatever, like that's what it is. I score goals. That's what I do. Right. Don't worry about it, which is really cool. And I know I'm not going to admit it to any of my Toronto friends, but it's actually pretty dope. And I actually like that swag that it brings. But my worry about Matthews is how, I mean, this is me saying it against an NHL player, of course, like how soft he is, softer and baby shit. Me, obviously, caveat that. But, like the wrist injury, the fingers, the thumbs, right? Like playoff hockey, especially against a decor like Montreal, those first few games, you can lay a licking on him. He has shown that I'm arguing myself in my head as this is coming out of my mouth because he's shown aptitude to be hurt, but then he's also shown aptitude to play through injuries and still score like it's nothing, right? Like when he was working through those injuries and still putting up like 2 or 3 goals every night, it's like, all right, well, it doesn't matter if you're hurt because you're still going to score and be bored about it. So
there was that stretch like in the middle of the season where everyone's like, everyone in Toronto's like, well, his wrist is acting up. And it was, okay, so with one wrist, he's proven he's still the best goal scorer in the league. Yeah. This is terrifying.
I know. Terrifying, right? I'm so glad they're going to be out of our division after this year. That's the only bright side of losing this North Division. I won't have to look at Toronto anymore.
So like with the whole Montreal thing is like, for me, Deneau's got to play out of his mind and shut down Matthews. But then like you still have to deal with Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Foligno just wrecking people. And then like further going back to the 4 lines thing, all of a sudden they'd be like, hey, Jason, Mr. Spezza, please go do stuff like
go score a hat trick out of nowhere, please.
Spezza's got like, I think almost 50 points.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Somewhere around there.
It's just like, that's a man who just doesn't care anymore. And he just loves what he's doing.
Just having fun out there.
Like this is the best the Toronto Maple Leafs have looked since I was like 9.
Yeah. I'd say they're scary. That's a scary squad.
And the one thing with Toronto that makes me laugh is I'm enjoying seeing all the things that Mike Babcock said wouldn't work are all working.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want Spezza to play. Spezza's one of the best players. Looks like one of the best players.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Hall couldn't get into a lineup, and now he's like their top 3 defense.
Mm-hmm.
And just these things, but like,
that's so funny to watch, eh?
It makes me so happy.
Yeah, me too.
Just especially because it's like he was very much like the face of like, well, who else are you gonna get? It's Babcock. He's the greatest. It's like,
well, when Toronto signed, I was pissed because I thought the Oilers were gonna get, oh no, it's coming. He's gonna come, Coach McDavid, and that's gonna be it. And I'm glad now.
It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's a good coach, but like a lot of his accolades were, man, it had to be really hard telling Nick Lindstrom to hop over the boards. Tell Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg to go hop over the boards. Like, there's only so far he's going to get you.
Exactly.
I think Toronto just murders Montreal personally.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I'm leaning. I think if they come in fully healthy and Gallagher's playing at 100%, Danault's playing at 100%, Weber's back to 100%, I think they have the best chance of any other team in that division to beat them, because I feel like what's going to need to beat Toronto is I think Edmonton would be the closest to matching up Toronto in skill, but doesn't have the physicality to do to Toronto what you need to slow down their skill. I think Montreal doesn't have the skill to keep up with Toronto's high-end skill, but has that physicality. But I think it's just outmatched. I think that the highs of that skill level that Toronto's bringing is going to be a little bit too much for Montreal. But where I think it's going to be interesting is now Toronto, say they beat Montreal, say they beat Edmonton after Edmonton mollywops Winnipeg. They now go in. If they match up against like a Colorado that has that skill and can, have some big guys and play physical and do that stuff, or a, Vegas or one of those guys, I don't know how they're going to match up. I feel like this is such an interesting year because we've never seen Toronto be this good, but now it's a whole year where we've never seen them play anybody but, the Canadian teams, which is arguably one of the easier divisions. I don't want to say the easiest because I feel like that is just anti-Canada hate, but you could make an argument that it's not the stiffest competition for Toronto to be working through this year. And I'm very curious to see how that matches up.
I would honestly put the North probably at the very least the second best division.
Yeah. I've been hearing lots of people going after. I always saw it with Toronto, Edmonton, and the way Montreal was playing towards the start of the year. And Winnipeg is always kind of a question mark since Buffalo left. You kind of don't know what's going on there and why they can't be as good as they should be. And that, but yeah, no, I agree. And Ottawa's on the up and up. I thought they were going to be a lot better than they were this year. And kind of this towards the end of the year, that's kind of what I thought we'd see out of them. And I think in the next 4 or 5 years, they're going to be a good squad.
Till Melnick screws it up completely.
Yeah, he'll find a way. Hey, oh, that's funny.
100%.
Oh, that'd be so.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that'd be so demoralizing to be a player on that team and to know that is hanging in the balance. Like, no matter how good we play, this guy's probably going to find a way to fuck it up. Like, oh, that'd be so disappointing to be in that organization.
It would be the Toronto organization from the 70s and 80s, where it was like, if you had a disagreement with the owner, he would trade all your friends to demoralize you and then trade you.
Yeah. Oh, man. Interesting. So you think overall, so your heart says Montreal, brain says Toronto. Is that about the take of it? Yeah. Okay. 100%. Well, since we're already in the North Division and we just did your favorite team, and now we got to go to the Oilers. What is your thoughts? I'm probably going to have to keep myself toned back for my excitement of this, but what are your initial thoughts going into that Winnipeg Edmonton matchup?
Party like it's 1984 because Connor's going to speed bag those guys.
That's what I like to hear, baby.
The only chance the Jets have personally is if Connor Hellebuyck stands on his head. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it before. That's the thing that I'm not getting too excited because that's their only chance, but that chance is pretty fucking good because Connor Hellebuyck. So this is the thing. Oilers are clearly my number one team. Nobody even comes close. But then my girlfriend, she's from Winnipeg and she's a Jets fan. And over the last 4 years of that, I've been watching their team just every all their games are on, all the Edmonton games are on. She watches every game mostly, right? So I know their team quite well. And I've got to see the things that Hellebuyck has done in some of those games where it's almost inhuman. Like the way he plays for his age blows me away. It makes me so angry that the Oilers have had. I can't say this because Mike Smith has been a godsend. Fucking love that guy this year. He is awesome. But like, if you look at, since I've been old enough to understand hockey and really know what I'm watching on TV, Tommy Salo, that was the high point of our goaltending in,
we had that 06 run with Rolison there until Marc-Andre Bergeron put it into the post. My favorite player crushing our dreams. Oh, that is just poetic justice to me as an Oiler fan and a sports fan in general. But I don't even know where I was going with that. I just could picture Rolison sliding into that post there, and all the other thoughts just went from my mind. I just had to, pour one out for the homies there. But yeah, no, that is why I'm so excited for this matchup, because I know both teams so well. Like, I have only ever known the Oilers, and then the rest of the teams peripherally, right? You always hear about Toronto, but this year I know every player and some of their farm team on Winnipeg, and it's going to be so interesting watching them match up. Oh man, other than Hellebuck, because I agree, I think that's the only chance that they stand is him standing on his head. But what do you think the other key pieces for Winnipeg is going to be? Because obviously, if you have Hellebuck standing on his head and the rest of the team plays like they were towards the end of the season, I don't even know if that's going to stop you, because the way that the Oilers play is the goalie being the last backup is not what you want, because Connor McDavid and Draisaitl will find a way to have it so the goalie's taken out of the picture, right? Like, I think it was maybe the second last game or the last game we played against Winnipeg. We scored, I think, 3 or 4 goals early on Hellebuck, but he had no chance on you. You could have had fucking him have a second extra on all 4 goals, and he still wouldn't have got there, because just the way they passed it around, the way he had to play angles, it was, empty net goals. Like, what you want if you're going to be trying to play against Edmonton is you want a decor like Montreal, because now you don't need those plays aren't going to happen where you allow them to, pass around in your end and get settled and put the goalie where it doesn't matter what goal you have in net. There's nobody stopping this, right? And that's where I think if Winnipeg just depends on Hellebuck, they're going to have a bad time. And I'm wondering, what do you think they need to step up other than Hellebuck to really stand a chance? Because if it is just Hellebuck, I think even that isn't going to really cut it.
The only thing I can think of, and I've kind of come back to it a few times the last week or so, because I've been thinking back to last year. And when the Oilers got eliminated by the Blackhawks in the play-ins, I wrote it in my review of, you don't stop McDavid, you stop everybody else. The best way I can compare it is, you sometimes see in basketball where they're like, just let LeBron shoot, we'll take care of everyone else. And have the one guy try and cover him. Like, I think in that series last year, McDavid had 8 points in 5 games, but the Oilers depth got utilized. Draisaitl is amazing, but you have a chance of stopping him, and then you hope that you can maybe slow down McDavid, and maybe you can have a fighting chance.
Maybe.
And that thing is maybe, because right now it's you can tell he's just saying fuck you to everybody, and he's like, I am on a mission,
and throwing hits and have a little bite to his game this year. It's hard to say this because I feel like obviously quite biased, but watching Connor McDavid every year since he entered the league has been spectacular. But he has taken jumps forward every year, and what his skill set got better each year. And we got to see this, the way his speed and his handling and the way he just plays the game differently. He did that from the start, and it just got better and better. It seems like this year, not only did he take that step where all those skills that he's been dominant in the league the last couple of years got better, but now he has this whole different aspect to his game where he's throwing some hit. He's got a little bit of grit and a little bit more leadership. He's throwing a couple face washes. That elbow on Kotkaniemi, I'm sure you hated it, but I love the fuck out of that, right? That made me so happy to see that. I feel like what McDavid needs is a little bit of that to drag the team into the fight. I think when he's buzzing and playing like he does, it naturally brings the guys with him, because it's holy shit, we got to keep up with this guy that's just flying by their whole team. But I think in the playoffs, when things get jammed down, it's hard if you're only relying on McDavid doing McDavid shit to get the team going. Sometimes there might be games where that gets locked down, where the team throws everything at that. And if that's the motor that runs the whole team, he needed to find other ways to get them motivated. And now I think he's added that to his game. And I feel like that takes his leadership up another level, which I think is something that the Oilers have struggled with in the past. And I think there's 2 ways you can go with it. I was actually talking to, that episode isn't out yet, but I was talking to an ex-NHL player a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about it. And he thinks that the Oilers needed to invest in some leadership to bring them in. And I was saying, I think what they're doing is actively not trying that route, and they're just trying to let McDavid figure it out. And every year they're adding to his leadership and trying to build him into that leader, because they think, I don't know, how do you bring another leader into that team with a guy like McDavid, especially with a Draisaitl beside him too? That's 2 just dominating players. How do you bring someone in to try and show them the ropes. If it's not Joe Thornton, I mean, that is the one. I feel like you could make the same argument for Toronto maybe, and then they found Joe Thornton.
That was the blasphemy thing of like, because it's comparing Toronto and Edmonton, is you go get guys that have been there and be like, we need you to play depth roles. And like the Leafs have just surrounded that core with Tavares and Spezza and Thornton and
Simmons,
Bogosian and Simmons and now Foligno. Like they've got other guys in there, but the focus is still on the core. It's just they've added the complementary pieces. But the cocky name, you think whatever. The NHL needs to do a better job protecting its stars.
They do. I agree. Yeah,
but like when it's a dumb comparison, but like I remember playing ball hockey here in Edmonton. Like they used to do a thing before games where like they give you a rundown, like we're looking for this. And there was a time where one game was like, we're not going to like allow any hitting from behind, which obviously, but there was been a run up of people getting hit from behind.
Yeah.
30 seconds into the game, a guy cross checks me from behind head first on the boards. I get up, I look at the referee who just told me I'm not taking any shit from behind.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, I was clean. So I walked up behind the guy and I slashed him. And I got the penalty. And I was like, you ain't going to protect me. I'm going to protect me. Simple as that. And that's what McDavid's doing is like the man's had his collarbone broken. I personally don't think the Giordano play the other year was dirty, but I know a lot of that's like the Zapruder film for the Kennedy.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. Yep.
Like, no, you can tell he changed his angle at this, like the 10th of a second that he purposely did.
Too fast of a game. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think in this round, I think the only thing that's going to undo the Oilers is if the rest of the lineup gets neutralized. Cause like I saw this, I'm going to fudge the numbers a bit, but there was a tweet going around, I think 2 weeks ago, with McDavid on the ice, the Oilers scoring chances are like plus 88 or something.
Wow.
With him off the ice, it's like minus 140.
And that's been Mike Smith picking up the weight all year long.
And that's my other fear is Mike Smith turns back into Mike Smith.
But what gives me hope is I'd still contend for myself of the best playoff series, the best goaltending performance in a playoff series that they lost was Mike Smith. With Calgary against Colorado, that first round when Colorado was trouncing them every night. And Mike Smith
was the only one that showed up.
But the way he showed up, like that's almost what I was going to say when I was talking about Hellebuck earlier of just the things he did. I was saying, like, I don't think I've ever seen like a player do it. The one time I saw it was Mike Smith playing against Colorado and the way he ratcheted up, but he wasn't playing like that all year. He was splitting the net. Riddick was the main goalie almost all that year. And then Mike Smith just says, no, move out of the way. This is my net now. Like I'm about to fucking stand on my head every game and at least give us a chance. And clearly they didn't win, but like if he's got that in him this year, maybe Toronto isn't such a lock to make it out. Maybe that's wishful thinking though. I don't know.
This is, I think the pessimist in me that I'm like, all right, this is a 41-year-old Mike Smith who he does that. Like, when you look at his like stats, he reminds me of a poor man's Pekka Rinne, or Pekka Rinne will be like 1 year he's lights out, the next year you're an NHL goaltender, and then he's lights out again.
Yeah.
Smith does the same thing, but it's like every 4 years, all of a sudden he's a 940 goal, and everyone's like, he's amazing. And then it's like, did we all forget about the last 3 years where he couldn't stop a beach ball? And like last year, he wasn't the better goalie in Edmonton, and he was one of the key reasons why you lost to Chicago.
Right.
And then this year he's just been like, no, I'm gonna play like 2012 again. Also, give me 1 second. I gotta run to the bathroom.
Yeah, no, me too. Good call. Kind of their thing. But other than that, teams could kind of take liberties as much as they wanted because McDavid was just too young and just didn't have that man strength. He was just getting a little bit held back. Yeah. Draisaitl had that strength, but I think he's just learned how to use it better now. Like I think he always was that guy because every once in a while, even when he was a rookie, you'd see him just truck a guy or a guy would come and hit him and he'd put him on his ass. And I'm curious to see what that looks like for Edmonton this year in the playoffs, if they can bring that physicality too, because I think that really is going to change up what we see out of that matchup. I mean, this might be looking ahead more so if they do end up matching up against Toronto, if they can really find that physical game and add that level to their game. I think that matchup with Toronto isn't as lopsided as I was viewing it before, because I think that's kind of what I thought the Oilers were missing, but also I don't really know what the Oilers have for that type of hockey in the playoffs because they haven't really been forced to show it yet. I don't know. I'm interested.
I just want 7 games of Matthews and McDavid going back and forth like it's Crosby Ovechkin in 2010.
Oh, how good would that be? How good would that be? And track meet every night, like 9-8, 7-6, right? Like how good would that be? Oh, and
because of how hard it's going to be to see it again.
Yeah, exactly. And so do you know Fraser Oliver? He was in Henday
Yeah, I know of him.
Know
I'm
of
sure
him,
I've
yeah.
said hello to him.
Yeah. So he's one of my best friends, right? And he's a diehard Toronto fan, right? So this is always when Matthews and McDavid come, I always say like, hey, at one point they're going to match up and we're going to have to go to battle like between the two of us. And now this is the one time, because that was what we're saying, is like, it's probably going to happen in like 10 years, right? Like it's not going to happen anytime soon. And then we just get this little Christmas gift of a North Division to see this matchup. I mean, all year it's been fun to watch, but it's different in playoffs. That is a whole different game. You're seeing the absolute best. And I think it was a little bit too this year. You can almost see, I wouldn't call it tummy sticks, but you can tell that McDavid and Matthews are good buds, right? And they train all summer, and there's a lot of camaraderie there. That goes out the window in playoffs. These guys are too competitive, too good. They want it too badly for that to come into play. And I'm curious to see that matchup, because I think people are going to have a misinterpreted perception of what that McDavid Matthews matchup looks like from regular season, because that's not really what those two players are capable of, and not really what they can show. And I'm curious to see what that is, because I feel like almost now watching this year, seems like Matthews hasn't really added any grit to his game, whereas McDavid seems to be wanting to get into the fight, getting into a little bit of the mucky stuff, and is, throwing his body around a little bit. And I'm curious how that always, it's nice to see in the regular season, but that pays dividends in the playoffs. That's when you need that. And I'm curious to see how that matches up this year. I mean, I think every year I'm curious to see that next evolution of guys like McDavid, Matthews. You could throw a couple names in there too. You just McKinnon. Every year, you just want to see what their peak is, because it's just moving at such a pace. It's like every year you're watching a new sport. Like it's awesome. But yeah, no, that is going to be that's going to be pretty spectacular. Any last comments on that one, or should we try one of the American ones that I know nothing about?
Nah, just it should be Edmonton, Toronto in the next round, and hope
should be.
God it is.
Should be. It should be.
It kills me to say it, but
yeah, I know me. Well, it doesn't kill me, but I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Of the American matchups, what do you think is most interesting to you? I'm a little partial to what's going to go on with the Florida matchup there, because that was something that was talked about a long time ago. Like, oh, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Then it just kind of seemed like we forgot about that storyline ever popping up, and then just out of nowhere it did this year.
Yeah, that, like, I guess the two that stick out to me, that's the main one. The other one's the Vegas, Minnesota one. And that's just because I've hopped on that bandwagon with day one. I don't know why I just latched on to Vegas, but
yeah,
the Tampa Bay, Florida series, I have been waiting for this for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
When I started writing, like I straight up offered to be the Florida writer and just like, I'll just watch the Florida games.
Yeah.
Part of that was because Yager was there. One
fair.
of the first big pieces I ever wrote was about why Florida matters and why we need them in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
I am so excited for this because this is the best Panthers team ever.
Mm-hmm. By far, I think.
I think I wrote about it like a week ago, and something like the current Panthers are, if over an 82 game season, we're on like 115 point pace.
Wow.
The best season they've ever had was it 4 or 5 years ago when they made the playoffs and lost to the Islanders, and they were like 102 points.
Right. And I mean, even points aside, just looking at them, like just the smell test, or just looking how they play, they look like a different team this year. They look like they came out with a swagger. And it almost, at the start of the year when there was all that hoopla about what's his pickle there? The D-man, Keith Yandel. And is he going to play the new guys there? They don't like him. And they were going to cut his Iron Man streak because they were saying he wasn't practicing with the team. And, they had the Spit and Chickles had to do almost a publicity run to get his name back there. And then they just come out the gate stomping guys in the asshole, right? Like just absolutely putting their foot up guys' asses. And it was awesome to see. I mean, for the storylines and for all that. And you kind of thought, or I shouldn't say you, I kind of thought, this must just be a little bit of that this is their fuck you. Just, no, this is our team. We're going to come together, and it's going to be just the first couple games, and then they'll peter off. Hasn't really, like they've been playing, but who got hurt? Who's the guy who went down? They had Ekblad, yeah. But then they loaded up at the deadline.
Oh God, who do they get?
They got somebody good, because I remember thinking like, oh fuck, like are they going to fall off a cliff? But then I remember at the deadline they actually made some moves and they grabbed somebody good.
Why am I drawing a blank on who they traded for?
I mean, I'm going to tell you why I'm drawing a blank, and it's because I watched no American hockey this year. Panthers deadline. Make minor moves at the deadline. Well, it didn't seem minor to me. Panthers are quiet. Oh, Brandon Montour. Oh, maybe that to me. I mean, that's not an Eric Ekblad, but to me, watching Montour play against Edmonton back in 2015 or 16, when the Oilers made in there. he was a good player in that series. Like he was shut down. He was playing good, like all over the ice. Like not a replacement, but at least they got another guy that can slot in there and play, and they're not going to have to go down into their depth. But
yeah.
And how have they looked since then? Have they been still playing half decent?
I mean, I know they curb stomped the Lightning in their last 2 games.
That always bodes well. They
outscored Tampa 9-1 in the last 2 games of the season.
But they didn't have Kucherov and Stamkos, eh?
And
they're both supposed to be there for game 1.
Oh yeah.
But coming in light though, like they haven't played in how long? Like, fuck.
Stamkos has only been out for like honestly like a month.
But like still a month?
Yeah. The Kucherov thing was just the
cap gymnastics.
Yeah, we'll delay your surgery till right before the season starts, so you're back in time for the playoffs. And it's a thing of like, well, how are they going to be? But it's like Tampa Bay is so deep that they can just be like, Kucherov, you're going to play the power play for the first 2 games, just like easy into it.
Easy. Yeah.
You have a former Art Ross winner, and he won the Hart 2 years ago, and you're like, oh, we can protect him and ease him into the lineup at come playoff time. Like, bonkers.
Can you imagine, like, as an Oiler fan, we've never even been close to that. Can you imagine how nice that'd be to be a fan of a team where you could take players like that and just have the I don't know what the word is, but the how nice that would be just to be able to slot or just say, you know what, just ease yourself into it. We got enough guys. We got depth for days. You know, like the Oilers have never been able to say that since like the 80s. And it's so painful. Oh, I just wish I could have that just once.
The closest I've come to having that like thought process was the year the Oilers made the playoffs. Did you ever meet Maria Kim?
I think the name sounds really familiar.
So her, and she's really good friends with me, and she's dating my good friend Ethan Gaines.
Okay. Yeah. No, I know who she is. Yeah, for sure.
So she became a hockey fan that year. Her favorite team is the Ducks.
Oh, wow.
So like they sweep the Flames in round 1, and like she's just going on about it. And like me and Gaines are both standing there, and I'm like, I had to wait till I was 24 to see the Canadiens sweep somebody.
Yeah.
And Ethan's just like, this is stupid. Like, and then they make the conference finals, and we both were like, if the Ducks win the cup this year, we're not talking to you ever again.
Yeah, it's good.
You just like, I'm gonna be a hockey fan now, and like get everything handed to you on a silver platter.
Oh, the worst. Oh, obviously the dream if it's for you, but the worst if it's anybody else that you know, especially if it's a good friend too. That's what's so funny about the name. I mentioned Fraser, and then there's another buddy, Chase, who the 3 of us were thick as thieves in Lister the last couple of years. And it was funny how it worked out because in hockey, me and Chase are diehard Oilers fans, and Fraser's a Toronto fan. Basketball, they both love the Lakers. I love the Raptors. I mean, love is maybe a strong word, but the Raptors are my team. Baseball, I got the Blue Jays. Those two got the Yankees. So every sport, it's 2-on-1 for one of us being the odd man out in what it is and has to take the shit from the rest of us. It's absolutely hilarious how it works out like that. But yeah, we, if anything happens with Toronto, we're texting. If anything happens with Edmonton, we're getting a text. And it's just that ongoing battle that makes all these matchups just that extra layer of sauce. I mean, hockey is such a great sport. You don't need that extra stuff. That is just icing on the cake. It's sprinkles. It's all that good stuff that just makes it extra more exciting. You got all these amazing storylines in the game, and then outside of the game, you get your own little storylines going. And that's what's fun about falling into sports like this and having other people to go on the ride with you is the agony. And the shitty thing about going to Lister and all those Calgary kids is how many people I have in my ear whenever something happens with the Oilers, because all the Flames fans I'm friends with now, just, it's like constant. I have this horde, just outside the gates ready to jump on it if one thing happens with the Calgary Edmonton. But, I'll take that for all the fun we had in Lister. If I had to take on a few more friends that are Flames fans, look, if such a thing can even be said, So Florida. Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see how Kucherov and Stamkos slot back in. The Panthers, they're kind of a wagon. They've been rolling. I don't know. That was the one where I haven't, when I'm trying to do my playoff picks, I've flip-flopped on that one so many times. I think that one might be the one I'm least confident in. Who do you think is going to take it?
I've gone back and forth on it too.
Yeah.
I think I lean Tampa's favor, and I think I haven't put it up yet, but my prediction, I've said Tampa Bay in 6.
Yeah, that's who I took.
Just because I'm like, I can't go against the former Stanley Cup champions, and they've been the best team in hockey for about 5 years now.
Yeah, and they're tight. You cannot discount how close a group is more than anything, right? Like when we're talking earlier about, speed or size and all that. when you look back on those teams that have won over the years, they're always the team that parties the hardest together in between the games and goes out and loves each other and has that camaraderie. Those are the ones that win. And I think when you have a team that just wins the cup, I mean, you can throw a wrench in this too, but I mean, I was going to say St. Louis, but they retooled a little bit. They lost some key pieces that were a part of that, where for the most part, that Tampa Bay Lightning team is pretty intact from that team that won the cup. Hey, like
they lost Bogosian and Shattenkirk. That's it.
Yeah, like, but really, like the core of their identity, Vasilevsky's still a freaking mutant. Like, yes. The fact that they can have that skilled of a skating squad and then have that good of a goalie is so unfair. Like, there's so many teams that would do anything to have either of those two things, and they have both. Like, oh, that is so mean. Yeah, no, that now that I rethink of it that way, I'm a lot more confident in my Tampa Bay pick. But it's playoffs, like we said. You never know what the fuck's going to go down.
The biggest thing working against Tampa at the moment, I think, is I was unaware of this. I've been just kind of catching up on stuff as I was writing, but they've been dealing with injury issues. Like Hedman's been
right, yeah, he's
like a month. Obviously Stamkos and Kucherov, and Vasilevsky apparently, like, he hasn't stumbled, but like hasn't been otherworldly over the last little bit. But then at the same time, in Florida, they're going to start Bobrovsky, and he's the second best goaltender in Florida,
right?
Because for the Panthers, sorry, not in Florida, because obviously Tampa. It's going to be interesting. I think I didn't even think of this until today when I was listening to, who Steve Dangle is. The Toronto Maple Leaf blogger, makes all the videos after the games.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar with his work, but I think I know of him more so than knowing.
I was listening to his podcast today, and he made the point of like the core of this Tampa Bay team. Yeah, they won the cup last year, but most of them were all there in 2015 when they lost to the Blackhawks. And Joel Quenneville is coaching the Panthers now, and so there may be that bit of thing like because like the Blackhawks probably shouldn't have won that cup. They were the lesser teams, and Quenneville just worked it like a friggin' musician. Yeah, there could be that thing of like, screw you, we're gonna, like, you have your best team ever for Panthers, we are going to punch our cousin in the face, we are going to screw over the guy that robbed us of a cup, we are going on a run, that kind of thing. I think it's gonna be Tampa. I would love for the Panthers to win, and in my heart I want the Panthers to win, but I don't think they do it.
And they have home ice.
And the Panthers have home ice.
And home ice with Quenneville, like, ooh, that's a spicy one. And from everything I've heard of Quenneville, is he's such a guy to bring a team together like that, to bring the cohesion and to get everybody on the same page, like almost the exact opposite of like a Michel Therrien, right? Like he is gonna get the most out of guys, but by bringing them together, but by bringing them together, not by tearing them apart and tearing one guy down, which I think is going to be interesting. I think that bodes so well with making a deep run in the playoffs. I mean, that first round matchup, they probably are hoping that they had anybody else that wasn't Tampa Bay, just for that, all the other shit that brings, and all the attention, and just to be able to focus on hockey. But I think especially for the game, that matchup's going to be amazing. And for hockey as a whole, that is going to do some really good things. Oh man, that's a good one. So then my next most exciting one after the Florida matchup has to be Colorado St. Louis. What are your thoughts on Colorado? And mainly just because I love Cale Makar and McKinnon, but mainly Makar.
Blues are dead men walking. Like,
that's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah,
I don't know how the Blues made the playoffs, because it was like every week it was like they were hanging on by the skin of their teeth. Yeah, it was like there was a point I think where it was like 5 straight weeks I wrote about another team like threatening the Blues and like bumping, like they would bump the Blues out of the playoffs, and the Blues would just like sneak back in, because like Arizona did it. Oh my God, LA did it. Chicago, not Chicago. Chicago was in the Central. The other one. There was somebody else in that West division, like had almost caught the Blues. I'm like, there's no way the Blues can keep fending off these teams. And then like the last 3 weeks of the season, the Blues were like, oh yeah, we're actually a good team, and like they made a bit of space, but like that team
was it Dallas? Was that the other one was in the West, or were they in the Central?
Dallas was in the same division as Florida.
Oh, right. That's the thing. I have no idea even who's in which divisions this year, because I didn't get to watch it.
It could have been me being optimistic and writing with the Sharks, because they had like a little run and almost challenged. But yeah.
Oh yeah. For a while there, they had like a 7-game streak where they were unreal again. Yeah. Which is, go ahead. I was going to say, because I didn't watch any hockey and you might have a little bit more insight, how did Carlson look this year? Did he take any steps forward? Did he look like his past self at all? Or because he was always, I love when he had that year with Ottawa, he was just like one of my favorite players. And I've always just been very curious about him after. And I just was so pissed off when he went to San Jose because he's in the Oilers division. I was like, damn it. But then it never really panned out. I'm curious. I always have a feeling that, okay, this is going to be the year he's going to come back and he'll be his old self, but it hasn't seemed to happen yet.
I mean, with Karlsson, the thing is he's never going to be his old self again because he's had so much damage to his ankle. Like he physically, I don't think can turn one direction.
That doesn't help.
Or can't turn one direction.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So like, and that's the thing is like, even him at like diminished state is still like, oh, he's a defenseman who put up like 50 points.
Yeah.
It's just, he's not the defenseman who put up 90 points for you anymore.
But he's getting paid like he's putting up 90 points is the problem. No.
Yes and no. Cause I think he's making a lot, but like that was also, you knew you were getting an injured asset and then you signed him long-term for a lot of money. And then we're shocked that he was an injured asset that you signed for a long-term. Like,
as an Oilers fan, I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And he came out this year and he made a comment like, I didn't sign here to go through a rebuild. And if I'm correct, that was when he did the thing where he had like the apple in the press conference and said it. And it's like, this is a beautiful smug moment of hockey personality. Why don't we get more of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that entire team needs to be blown up.
Yeah. Again, very happy about it as an Oilers fan, but I couldn't agree more, which is so interesting to see because it seemed like that California trio were just getting better and better. And it seemed like the organizations were moving forward so that they were going to be powerhouses for a long time. And then they all kind of fell off at once. And the 1 year they fall off, obviously they're always not in the Oilers division, so we can take advantage of it, which is kind of funny. But I think it's not going to be a big turnaround for any of those three teams. I think they're going to be looking at much of the same next year if the divisions go back to normal.
I think Los Angeles is the one team I could see bouncing back quick.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
Yeah, they're still a ways away, but
they still got Quickie, hey?
Yeah, they got Quick. And they've got Calvin Peterson, who played better than Quick for most of the season.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. Like, I had no idea. I don't even think I've heard Calvin Peterson's name once in my life. That is astonishing to me. How long does Quick have left there? I want to ask more about these last years. I'm hearing all these other teams that are.
I have no
idea. Yeah, same here. Nothing. Not even a clue. For that, I agree. I think Colorado is going to be a pretty big stomping. I'm really excited about it because I'm excited to see what a dominant team like Colorado can do up against a team like I think that's going to be just fun to watch a shit kicking. I think it's going to be a sweep. And I think Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and these guys are going to do some wild shit. That's going to be really fun to watch. And what excites me too is I think the momentum that Colorado can pick up in that first round against St. Louis can bring them right to the finals, depending how it shakes out. So now who would Colorado, who's the other one in that division? Vegas, Minnesota. Ooh, fuck, yeah. That's tough. Yeah. Oof. So pretty much in my head, whoever wins that Colorado Vegas, I mean, let's go to Vegas, Minnesota. My guess is Vegas is going to take that one. I think it's going to be tighter than maybe I think because I haven't watched Minnesota in a long time, but they seem to be a whole different team this year from what I've heard.
Minnesota didn't lose to Vegas in regulation this year.
Wow. I read that actually. And just before we hopped on, actually, I'd read that and that blew my mind.
They were the only team that had a winning record against Vegas this year.
Wow. But again, playoff hockey, that shit all goes out the window, which is what makes it so exciting because playoff hockey is such a different thing. How does with this current iteration of Minnesota, and it sounds like you're pretty familiar with Vegas, but I'm curious on the physical side, how does Minnesota match up? Are they going to be are they built for playoff hockey or were they kind of playing some skill game?
They've been playing more of a skill game thanks to Kaprizov. I haven't seen a lot of Minnesota. It was like I was dropping in here and there, like catching up here.
Same here. I just watched the Kaprizov highlights at the end of the day.
I have Vegas having the edge because
it's Vegas.
Which is
Mark Stone. Yeah,
such a weird statement to say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Mark Stone's gonna be staring down Kaprizov for 7 games or whatever it's gonna be, and he's gonna be like, "You're not doing anything."
Yeah,
and it's
Reeves will run him over one game.
It's it's just Stone alone. It scares me how good that man is defensively.
He is I feel. Go ahead.
Stretch this season where it was like when he was on the ice on the penalty kill, it was like 20 odd opportunities in a row where like the opposing team didn't get a shot.
Wow,
not a goal, a shot.
Yeah, he is so good when when he arrived in Vegas and they put out the red carpet for him and treated him like that, I was just so mad because I'm like, fuck, they are going to lock him up for a long time. And he's going to be so good there. And he's going to be so loved there. And he's going to finish his career as a Golden Knight. And it's going to suck to watch because we're going to have to fucking watch him dominate everybody else for that long. And it's interesting. But yeah, so you think they're going to have a slight edge on Minnesota. And then I'm curious, because that's kind of what I think too. I think it's going to be Vegas coming out and Colorado coming out. And then that is going to be determine which one of those two teams is going to the final. Because
that's basically what I think too.
So quick question too. They play the division games 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. Those two teams play. Then is it reseeded after that, or does West play? Oh,
third reseed. Yeah,
that's what I thought, and that's made it so hard to pick all the for the box drafts and stuff, picking players and like those type things. It's so hard to pick this year because you don't know how it's going to shake out after the first 2 rounds. Yeah, oh, that's interesting.
It means technically we could get a weird matchup like I don't know, Montreal, Boston in the Stanley Cup final.
Wow. Oh, yeah,
I've had that thought like last weekend, just randomly going, I know it's not going to happen. If it does, it's like, I don't know how I'm going to survive.
Yeah. But, or an Edmonton Vegas final.
Yes.
That would be cool. I'd take that. Oh, that'd be fun.
Like, I would too, because I want to see again Mark Stone just stare down Connor and be like,
"Oh yeah." I don't think that would go well for the Oilers, but who knows? I just that and again, I say that because I don't think that go that well for the Oilers, but I have this feeling that is what I think is going to happen. But I also have a feeling that McDavid might just say, "Nobody can stop me. Fuck everybody else in this league. I'm going to drag these guys to the promised land," right? And I feel like that is always an opportunity. Every year, there's it's like when he came into the league, there was like a 3% chance he could do that as a rookie. And then the next year is like a 4% chance and a 5% chance. And each year, there's a more percent chance that this is going to be the year where he just says, "Fuck all you guys. This is my league. I am dominating it." And it's like, maybe that's this year. Maybe it's not. As an Oiler fan, just the opportunity that keeps going up and that percentage keeps going up and all these other pieces are falling into place. The fact that we got Puljujarvi back this year and he's made an impact and not been a weirdo that nobody likes. And the fact that my current, hard to say my favorite Oiler, but other than the big boys, just like the one that has my heart ever since we drafted him, Yamamoto, the way he's played this year, like, I'm just so excited for the years to come with the Oilers right now, which is a feeling I've almost never had it as an Oiler fan, that I can be excited and like, it feels so good. I just love it. I could talk about the Oilers all day. We already did talk about them. So what do you think? How does that matchup going to go if Colorado and Vegas both make it past and they match up? How do you think that's going to play out? Because that one has me stumped.
Coin flip it. Because like Vegas, Colorado has obviously the better top end talent in McKinnon, but then Vegas responds with, we have security blanket defense in, they can throw out Stone and then alternate having Pietrangelo and Theodore on the ice for.
Oh yeah, they got Pietrangelo this year.
Yeah. They could have those two on the ice for 50 minutes of the game if they want. Right now they're playing Theodore and Pietrangelo as a pair. So, the puck's almost never in your end. Yeah. Yeah.
I bet you their Corsi numbers are just out of the world when they play together.
Pacioretty is an underrated defensive player. And this is the first time in his career he's been better than a point per game player.
Wow. Now,
the issue with him is he tends to disappear every year come the playoffs.
Yeah.
He's had one good playoff run in his life, and that was the year the Sharks came back from that 3-0 deficit with 3 minutes to go. But he had 11 points in 7 games.
Yeah.
And then Vegas has in goal, they've got the better goaltenders because Robin Lehner has been one of the best goalies for the last 3-4 years in the NHL. This is Fleury's, I think, his best season ever.
Really?
Even Lehner's saying Fleury should be in the Vezina conversation.
Wow.
Fleury just recently became the 3rd winningest goalie of all time, I think.
I love Fleury. He's awesome.
3rd or 4th, one of the two. I can't remember. But they have the edge in goaltending, but Colorado has the edge in the top end duo talent. But then Vegas just magically pulls goal scorers, or Alex Tuck plays on their 3rd line. The man can't find a way to. Tuck can't crack the top 6 because Vegas refuses to break up that Smith, Marsh, So Carlson line, which is fair. They're amazing.
Yeah, and they've been amazing for a while.
Yeah, but he plays the same position as Pacioretty. So him getting bumped up only happens when someone gets hurt. So you've got a guy that can score whenever he wants on the 3rd line. And then Colorado counters, and it's everyone remembers Kadri as the hothead in Toronto, which yes, he's a hothead, but he's a very good player.
and I think is built. I think the lights and the media and stuff of Toronto was not good with his propensity to cross wires, right? And I feel like taking a step into that Colorado system where you definitely, it's a step back in terms of that pressure, but then also with all the pieces around where he can kind of fit into a lower role, I think he's going to be awesome for them this year. I think he is going to be a huge impact on them. And then, I mean, we haven't even mentioned it. Cale Makar, like fucking.
Yeah, I was about to say that because it's like we mentioned Pietrangelo. It's like, well, they throw back Cale Makar and it'd be like, hi.
and in such a different way too. Like it's hard to find a comparison for Cale Makar just with what he's doing. It almost seems like he's changed. I mean, I think the comparisons you'd want to make is kind of the guys that are coming up, you know, the Quinn Hughes guy, but like they're playing a similar type of game where it's very fluid and the things and the skating is amazing. And they're almost like changing what it is to be a D-man in a way. And there's no real comparisons of guys that did it before that I can think of, but maybe I'm just too new of a fan to really point it out.
I think all those guys owe Erik Karlsson a large thank you.
That is a fair point. Yeah.
Because like, I think back to like 5-6 years ago and everyone was just harping on Karlsson for like, oh, he's just a forward. He doesn't really play defense. Yeah. And then I see these same guys being like, Quinn Hughes is amazing. And I'm like,
yeah, that's it.
Like what?
Exact same shit. But I think what's so impressive about what they're doing now is like watching Quinn Hughes earlier. Like I just watched it. This is the first time I'm podcasting during an Oilers game, which I think is also a record, but it's a meaningless game. It doesn't mean fuck all, so I don't really care. But I just caught a minute of it where Quinn Hughes was really pressured. He was the last man back, had somebody right on him. And his skating and his confidence with the puck and his stick handling gives him this ability. And I'm seeing it with a lot of young D-men coming up and this confidence that they're coming up with where you used to never see it. You don't see D-men handle the puck like this confidently when they're in the danger zone by these really guys that have been playing in the league for 10 years. By that point, it's old hat. But that confidence just gives them that extra moment where you think like, oh, I'm waiting for Quinn Hughes to make a bad pass. He's in a bad spot. This is usually what happens with young D-men. But he's so confident that he's going to protect this puck that he just waited that extra second, made that one extra turn, beautiful bounce pass, all the pressure gone, really good chance. And it was like, that is so cool to me that whereas this freedom to let these young players that have that talent, I think you need the talent to earn the freedom to learn how to play this game this much. And I think that's what holds guys back from ever learning to play the game this way because they never had the freedom to try it is you have such good skating and such good stick handling that you don't have to worry as much. You can dig yourself out of these positions that you never want to be in as a D-man. And that opens you up to play a little bit more free and get up in the rush and you'll make it back and you'll make good decisions. You can skate back. You can, go in and dig. And I just love to see how well-rounded it is where you don't hear guys making that same dig as they were at Karlsson about not playing defense, because I think it's not even their defense. It's almost like the skills that are making them such amazing offensive D-men are somehow they're finding ways to transition that into their defensive game too. And just the crispness of their passes and the amazing skating ability they have just makes them be able to, they're breaking ankles in their own D zone. It's amazing. Like, whereas you did that in minor hockey, dipsy doodling behind your own net or some shit, breaking forwards ankles, you would be benched in a fucking second, right? Like there's no way. Well,
that's part of it is like, I think it's just the change of the development of the game.
Yeah.
Like I think back to when I was playing minor hockey in like 2005, it was your biggest guys went on the blue line. You could skate. And the furthest they were allowed to carry the puck was to the dots to make a pass.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like there's more of a focus on actually developing individual skill, like through Tom Thumb, Novice, Adam, and being like, we'll worry about the team stuff later. So now you're getting these guys that are developing the same way a forward would, and then being like, oh, hey, we can play. Like there's just the perception change on how you can play the game. It's not you're 6'7", you automatically have to be a defenseman. Like,
yeah. And now you see these huge forwards going out and dominating and showing that like they can play with skill, and like that's what creates the Josh Andersons and the Tom Wilsons of the world, because they can go out and do those type of things. And the league now is at such a rapid pace. Like it's evolving so quickly that you can try new things and almost create styles on the fly and just match whatever your own game is. It's because things are in such flux. It feels like you can kind of try anything. And if it works, if it pays off and the team is successful, it seems like teams are allowing it to just see where it goes. Let's see. Let's try it out, which is awesome as a fan, because you get to see all these new types of styles and the game's changing. And you have a team that it almost looks like they're playing two different sports because of how vastly different your styles can be. It kind of used to be in the back in the day, either you're more of a shutdown team, you're more of a run and gun team, maybe you're a stretch pass team, right? There's maybe like 5 or 6 different styles you can play. Now it's like there's 50 different ways you can play this game. And there's certain things like the speed that's coming in that you need these certain factors, but within that, you can find all these different ways to play the game now. It's super cool to watch. I love it.
The other thing too that's helping us along too is this makes me feel very old and I really dislike it, but like we're officially in the generation that is looking up to Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, and those guys.
Yeah.
The way like when I came up, it was Yzerman and Sakic. So like these players are obviously like the most skilled that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And like these were guys that were committed every offseason, developed. Like I remember like Crosby one year had like he was one of the worst face-off men. And he went, no, I'm going to fix
all
that.
Summer.
Back the next year, he's the best. I'm like, and it's just the complete overhaul of the way the game went.
Right.
Because like even in like the 80s and 90s, like leading into the 90s, like there was off-season training, but it wasn't like now where guys work out with 11 months a year.
Right.
And like, and it's similar to like, I think if you were like talk to our dads talking about like hockey when we were being born, it'd be like, oh, it's a completely different thing. And like, I know I've gone back and I've watched a few games. If you watch any of those like Oiler Flames games from the 80s, that's not hockey. It's Thunderdome.
Yeah.
And even going back to watch a game,
Rumble.
I remember me and Liam watched one and we had to pause it and we're like, what are we watching? Like, I'm pretty sure I watched Lanny McDonald being a rear naked choke, just skating the zone. And I'm like, there's like 3 penalties you got to call in there.
Yeah.
And even if you go back and watch hockey I was watching a couple highlights from the Ducks run in 2003 the other weekend.
Yeah.
That doesn't even look like hockey anymore. And everything, it's just like you said, just rapidly advancing. There's more and more. I think the internet too is helping people be like, you can find more things where like when we were growing up, it was, you only got to see what was on TV. So like if you lived in Alberta, you're only seeing the Oilers. If they only play one style, like,
that's what you're seeing.
That's what you're going to model after. Now it's, you can watch what someone's doing in Russia and then jump over to see what a guy's doing in Vancouver and then combine abilities from both of them.
And then you see the step up where you see guys like McDavid and Matthews train all summer together with 2 of the best players in the world. And they both come out with all these new skills, all these new, like it's just such a rapid pace. And I love what you said about the evolution of seeing the influences start being what comes into the game. I was just having a conversation. I don't know how much of a golf fan you are. I'm not a huge golf guy, pretty peripherally. There's a guy named Bryson DeChambeau who is really changing the game right now. He's doing some really weird stuff, really concentrating on ball speed. And all he's about is just crushing the ball as far as he fucking can. He looks like a mutant. He's at Augusta, they have to move him back like 100 yards off the driving range just so he doesn't clear over the net into the media area. It's ridiculous what he's doing. But what I was having a conversation is the same thing as you see the evolution of guys looking up to guys like Lindstrom and Gretzky and all that too. Guys looking up to Crosby and Ovechkin, and you see these evolution of their game, and it kind of follows in these paths. And I'm so excited. Like, what are the kids that are looking up to the McDavids and McKinnons of the world and the Draisaitl's going to be coming up with next? Because for golf, I guarantee you right now, there's so many 12-year-olds just sitting in their garage, just trying to swing that club as hard as they can and work on mechanics and ball speed and all this dumb shit that they're seeing, which to the golf purists, that probably just makes their skin crawl. But that's what it is. And that's what they see. And that's so much fun because, and who I was talking to, he's a pretty golf purist and he didn't like the idea. And he was saying, how golf is just too tough of a game where you're going to waste so much time doing that. Where if you just worked on your short game or something, the effects to your performance will be different. But I think the difference is, and I think there's parallels to hockey with this, is hitting a ball far is so much funner that people would sacrifice having a better score. And like if you said you can either hit the ball 40 yards farther off the tee or take your game 6 strokes off your game, which is like not even comparison. Anybody with a brain would take the strokes, right? Like your overall game playing better. But it's so much fun to hit a ball far that is what's going to stick with those kids. That's what they're going to do, even if it's not maybe efficient, right? And I feel like that's the same thing with what we're seeing is maybe not everybody can be a McDavid and not everybody can be a Cale Makar, but it's so much fun to watch. That's what the kids are going to be trying to do. That's what we're going to be aiming for. And then now that opens the door for these kids that can be that Connor Bedard, right? Like him watching McDavid play probably really gave him the freedom to be like, no, that is a route that you can play. That is a path that some hockey player can take. And now he's showing the next levels of it. I'm just so excited to see what we're going to see in the next 5-10 years of hockey. I think this is the best hockey. That's almost a silly thing to say. It is, right? But the amount that it is, because when you watch football today, it's the same thing. It's the best football we've ever seen. I'm just pulling a sport out of my ass, but you take football and look at it 10 years ago before that, it doesn't look that noticeable jump. Like you say, you look at hockey from 2003 and it's a different sport, right? Like that is so exciting that we're going to see. I don't think this evolution is slowing down at all. I think it's getting better. And the type of hockey we're going to be watching when we're sitting in our rocking chairs is going to look like they're wearing rocket skates, right? Like everybody's going to be skating like McDavid. Everybody's going to be wheeling on the blue line like Makar. Every goalie's going to be Vasilevsky. And it's going to be, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm just so excited to see it. Oh.
I'm just praying we don't become the 55-year-old guys that like, this guy sucks because like he doesn't look like our vision of a hockey player.
Yeah. If the game goes back to some completely different route and takes goes back to shut down defense, and that's what wins you games, and everybody takes on oh fuck me, who's the coach of the Islanders?
Barry Trotz.
Thank you.
Anti-hockey.
Yeah, right. Like everybody goes on the Trotz scheme and shuts it down, right? Like then we'll be those old guys, and maybe that leads us right into the next matchup. Pittsburgh Islanders. What do you figure there? Because Pittsburgh, again, haven't really watched much games, have no idea, but Pittsburgh seems to be back to them old selves. They're rolling, but New York Islanders can always pull that card where they can shut down anybody, it seems, and just make a run at it.
Well, that's the thing. Like 2019, when they played, the Islanders swept Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Crosby had one assist.
One assist, hey?
Yeah.
There's going to be guys from that team that when they retire, that is what that is going to be the peak of their achievement. They're going to say, we swept Pittsburgh and we kept Crosby to 1 point. I'm sure there's going to be some players. Oh, it's funny.
100%. Had the playoffs started like 6 weeks ago, I tell you, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But like since the deadline, Pittsburgh's been on fire, mm-hmm. and the Islanders have not been.
Yeah.
Like there was a stretch where the Islanders, I don't know how far ahead they were, but it was like, it felt like they had locked up the division, and then they exploded and they just fell apart. Like I think the only team they've beaten in regulation in the last month has been the New York Rangers. It's some weird thing that they were dropping games to the Sabres with an ECHL goalie in net. And it's like, no one else is worried? I think we should be worried.
Yeah, there's some alarm bells going off.
So with how good the Penguins have been and how bad the Islanders have looked, like I've got the Penguins curb stomping them.
Yeah, that's what I have too. But the one X factor in my head that I always take is when we talk about what we started the conversation off is that difference between regular season and playoff hockey and how you can change your game. And I think what I always think about with the Islanders is if you take a team like the Oilers, and now for them to go from Oilers hockey to playoff hockey, they have to really change their style, right? And to add that physicality, you're going to be sacrificing certain things that let them play the game like they do in the regular season. Some of that high flying shit just doesn't work when you're adding a physicality to your game. You're in different positions on the ice when you're always finishing your checks. Whereas the Islanders, their system of that shutdown system can pair so well with the added physicality and what playoffs are and that no time and space. That's their game. So you never know. I feel like every team looks different from regular season to playoffs, but some teams' dynamics just are glove in hand fit for that type of style. And that's always that X factor. You never know what the Islanders are going to look like in the playoffs because they could do the exact same thing with Pittsburgh. And it's so funny that they're matching up again. Oh, I bet you there's so much in their heads about what happened last time. But didn't that just happen where a team swept and then they just matched up again? Columbus and then they got dumpstered.
Yeah, last year they swept Tampa Bay, and
that's what it was.
Yeah, and that was the thing was like everyone was like, man, Columbus is this hot new team. It's like, no, they got lucky. The Lightning imploded. Kucherov got suspended in the middle of the playoffs.
What did Kucherov do? I remember that.
I think he just went after someone and like cross-checked him in the face or something like that.
Oh yeah, I remember that now.
It was a stick infraction. That's all I know. Because like the Islanders are very good that like they normally are playing a playoff game and they're the boa constrictor sucking the life out of you.
Yeah.
But every time they match up against a team that can score and score well, they get beat. Like everyone's like, oh, maybe they can beat Tampa. And Tampa was like, no. And then the year they swept the Penguins, it was like, well, maybe they can beat the Capitals. I think they played the Capitals was like, no. Like they can get so far and then they just run into a brick wall. And like Pittsburgh was the second best offense this year. They did that.
Sounds right.
Malkin being in the stands for 20 odd games.
Wow.
And missing Kasperi Kapanen for 16 games. And that was 2/3 of their second line.
Wow.
They picked up Jeff Carter, who at 36 apparently had flashbacks to playing in Philadelphia because in 14 games he has 9 goals.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Jeff Carter, like LA Kings Jeff Carter?
Yeah, that Jeff Carter, like the one who didn't want to
I didn't even know he got traded.
Yeah, it was like they picked him up at the deadline and he's like, yeah, I'll go to Pittsburgh. But
why not? Go play with Crosby and Malkin. They're that's the thing about Pittsburgh is regardless how they look, which it's awesome when they go in looking like they are now, but you can never count them out, even if they weren't looking like that. Like that year, that's a pretty safe bet going to Pittsburgh. They're always going to be a contender. They're always in the mix. They could always go in. Oh, that's exciting.
I think they've made the playoffs like 13 straight years now. And they've got 3 Stanley Cups. And I want to say they have two other conference final appearances.
Wow. That is dominance, hey? And it's almost like sneaky dominance. Like, that they're that good, but I feel like sometimes you just forget like how wild that is. Just take the cups away. Just making the playoffs 13 years in a row is wild in that league. Like that is so impressive, especially when you're an Oilers fan and you get to see 11-year stretches where you don't even make the playoffs once, which is almost just as impressive. Like the reverse way to not make the playoffs.
Right. They didn't make the playoffs last year.
Yeah. That was so when that happened, right? Me and my buddy Chase, right? We're the Oilers fans, Fraser's a Toronto fan. So I was so devastated when hockey left and just wanted it back on that when they announced that they were bringing it back, I didn't care about what the format was. I was just so happy there's going to be Oiler hockey. Chase goes, this is bullshit. They were locked up in a playoff spot. Now I have to play this play-in bullshit. I said, whatever. We don't got to worry. Like have you seen how we're playing? Like we're so good. McDavid in the playoffs. It is cut and dry. I wasn't even worried about it. And then to see what happened, and I was so disappointed. And I feel like I almost jinxed it by not being pissed off like he was, because I think that was the right call to be after I saw how it was played out. Hindsight is 2020. But it was not fun. So I think we can settle on that one. Pittsburgh, yeah, pretty good. You never know with New York Islanders. They could pull something out of their ass where they shut down and maybe take a game or two. But I agree. I think Pittsburgh looks too good. And they actually are one of those teams where I would not be surprised to see them in the final again this year.
Pittsburgh is now the team that when we were growing up, the New Jersey Devils, it didn't matter what happened to them. Like you could literally shoot someone on their team in the face and like take away half their roster. And they're like, no, we're still gonna make the playoffs. Don't worry. We're gonna find a way to do it. That's Pittsburgh now. It's like, I feel I can't bet against them not making the playoffs and not winning at least a round. Yeah, I agree. Next one I'm curious to ask you about, because this is the team that, like I said, I think whoever wins between Colorado and Vegas, if they match up, I think that is a team that's going to be in the final. And then if I had to pick one other team that I want to say the same type of thing, I think that like I'd be very surprised if I don't see them in the finals, is Carolina. And they're matching up against Nashville. And I have no idea, because what I thought I was surprised Nashville made the playoffs. Like, did they absolutely turn it around? Because I thought they were sucking a huge one. They were. But so they're coming up at the right time. Are they going to pose a threat to Carolina, do you think? They could. Yeah. You never know. It's a thing of like, all you need is a goaltender to be hot in the playoffs, and UC Saros has been red hot and like turned their season around. But like no one on the Predators scores. Like, I think the last time I wrote about them, it was something like they had 2 guys that had more than 10 goals on the team. Wow. And I think it was by the end of the season, they were going to have like 2 more guys just hit, like if they stayed at their pace, hit 10 goals. Wow. But I don't know how they made it. It doesn't make any sense, because it was like 2 months ago, they were going to be blown up at the trade deadline. Yeah. Like everyone was gone and they went on a bit of a run and they were like flirting with a playoff spot. And it's like, well, you going to trade everyone? Like, no, we're going to see how this plays out. And then like they sneak into the playoff. Like they just snuck over the line. But Carolina is very good and very well coached, and they're very tight. And that is my number one thing when I see a good coach and a tight squad that believe in each other and want to run through a wall for their coach and want to do everything to win for the guy beside them. I put a lot of emphasis on that, not to mention the fucking crazy amount of skill they got on that squad, right? They are very talented, but even all that aside, just going on that factor, I really give them a step up, and I would not want to match up against them. Yeah. Like the only edge I can give Nashville is, okay, you have the hot goalie and maybe experience, because a lot of these guys have been around for a while. There's a bunch of the guys on the roster went to the cup final against Pittsburgh a couple years ago. Right. But then it's like, oh yeah, Carolina went to the conference final 2 years ago. Like they beat the defending Stanley Cup champions. Like they they've got their own talent. Like they sat under the Justin Williams learning tree for 2 years, and like that man's still around like the franchise and hanging out and like talking to the guys. And Brendan Moore is an amazing coach, which is amazing because I remember when he got hired, everyone's like, "Oh, you guys went on the cheap and just looked up at the rafters, went, how about that guy?"
Yeah,
but like, yeah, they should curb stomp Nashville. I hope they curb stomp Nashville.
And then if they do, they match up against the winner, Washington, Boston. Is that
Tampa, Florida?
Oh, so then who does Washington, Boston, the winner of that one go?
Pittsburgh, the Islanders.
Oh, yeah. I got you. Right. Yeah. Like I said, I have no idea how these even match up. Okay. So if Carolina beats them, they would match up against
one of the Florida teams.
And I'm just trying to think because I'm so coin flip on that Florida series still, even though I think Tampa has the slight edge in my head, I wonder how Carolina matches up against them. That's going to be interesting. I don't know.
That's the thing is like Carolina is one of these teams where it's because like no one ever talks with, like they don't talk with them unless it's someone screaming at the cloud of a storm surge.
Yeah.
Like Jacob Slavin is one of the better defenders in the NHL. He's one of these guys where like the Norris Trophy's become this weird legacy award, not who's the best defenseman.
Yeah.
And Slavin probably could have been in contention for the Norris last 2 years. I think he did get nominated in 2019.
Right. I think so.
But like Dougie Hamilton should have won it. Probably would have won it last year had he not got hurt. And he's amazing. And all everyone can focus on is he got ran out of Boston and Calgary. And it's like,
apparently he's a weird fucking dude, but he's so good. So good.
And it's like, you got ran out of Boston. That doesn't sound like the Boston media at all. They never do that to anybody.
Yeah.
Like Sebastian Aho is a superstar, like capital S superstar. Svechnikov is amazing. They've got like a 3-headed monster in net where like James Reimer is a solid goaltender. Peter Mrazek, when his head is screwed on tight, is a solid goaltender. And then I can't even say the name of their other goalie. It's like Neto Vanchik or something.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Similar to me with you saying with Calvin Peterson, like I saw him like half of the season. I'm like, I don't know who this man is. I've never seen him before. And he's been lights out. Yeah,
I feel like this year it especially impacts me because one of the biggest things, Oilers and goaltending, right? It's been so long since we found it. Like to see guys like Connor Hellebuck and Elvis Merzlikins and all these young goalies. It seemed like last year and this year, the amount of goalies that came out of nowhere and are good and young, and the fact that the Oilers still cannot get any of them, and all these teams are just like, there's teams that have like 3 good young goalies right now, and the Oilers have Mike Smith at 41 just busting ass in there and being awesome. Don't get me wrong, super thankful that we have him, but God, does that tick me off that there's just these goalies that seem to be growing on trees and we can't scoop up one. What can you do?
I mean, part of it all goaltenders is just voodoo. Like, and I hate that line because it's like a very antiquated statement, but it's so hard to get them because like it does take a bit longer for a goalie to develop.
It's so hard to know what you have.
And it's one of these things where it's like, it feels like they're an overnight sensation, but it's that much harder to get a rookie goaltender in because everyone has that fear of, oh no, he's 20, he can't handle the stress. But then it's like, we have no problem throwing a guy in that's 20 at center and being like, we got 3 other centers.
Yeah, exactly. There's 9 other players in that position. Well, not that position, but like 8 other forwards that can, insulate him and cut his minutes down, those type of things and goaltending is such a mental game. Like there was I think it was a Chicklets interview with a goalie coach, and he was talking about Mike Smith, and he was saying that the mental part of the game aside, Mike Smith is the best, not just goaltender, but the best athlete he has ever seen. He said when he is at his peak and his head is in the right spot, he does things that he's never seen out of any goal. And he was a goalie coach that has been around for so long. And it's so interesting to see that there's that much impact of the mental game in a position, because you don't see that almost anywhere else in sports, really. Maybe pitchers in baseball, maybe. But again, you have such the bullpen is pretty deep. You have other guys you can rely on. You can go cold and you can have a good reliever that can come in and help you out, right?
And pitching too, it's like you play a game and you get like a week to think about and break it down. Where like
exactly,
Mike Smith could have like a bad game. It's like, no, you're going again Thursday and we need you to get this win.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just amazing what that mental side of the game does. It makes it so difficult. But hopefully the Oilers can figure it out at some point. I've got to bring them back to Carolina. Yeah, so they got goaltending, they got amazing D-men, they've got forwards. And they're well coached and they're tight. Yeah. That to me, I think the only thing that slows them down is Colorado or Vegas. I feel like other than that, I think they walk through almost everybody. Maybe Toronto, just because I don't know if Carolina has that physical edge to combat that high end talent that Toronto has, maybe. But even that, like, I don't know. I'd probably still give my favorite. I'd still favorite Carolina over Toronto, I think.
I mean, if it ends up being Carolina, Toronto, those teams in the last couple of years have been absolute track meets.
Yeah.
Like there was that game 2 years ago where it was, I think it was like 8-6 or 8-5, where Mitch Marner had like 3 goals instead of like 3 goals, like a minute and a half. That was against Carolina.
Oh man, how good would that be? Fuck.
I would.
I feel like I was trying to do some like math in my head just for like pools and stuff to figure out like who my favorites are and how they're going to come out and how that once the reseed happens. I couldn't make heads or goddamn tails of it. I have no idea how it's going to look after the first 2 rounds. Like, and I don't think anybody does. I think that's kind of the point of it. But like, I thought I understood the game at least a little bit enough to know kind of who they are. And even if you don't know the teams at all, just to know this, just use the standings alone and kind of pull it up. It's still hard to say. So I don't know who's going to match up. I don't know. Cause I was even trying to think like on the off chance Edmonton makes it out. Who do you think we'll match up against? Right. Like that's what I was trying to see. And I was like, I have no idea. Cause it really depends on
who comes out of the other 3.
Right. Because you could have 3 super high seeds. So it's just the highest one gets the Oilers, right? Just in that situation, or plug any other team into that. Or you have kind of a weird one that makes it up, right? Like a kind of a lower seed. Now you have 2 guys coming in that are lower seeds, and it is interesting. Oh, we didn't even talk about Washington. That is when you know I'm on my peak of my podcast game right there. Nailed it. I haven't watched any Washington other than that game against the Rangers after
the Wilson debacle.
Yeah, the Wilson debacle. Before we jump into it, and I know I've got you here for a long time. I'll try and wrap it up after this Washington Boston. But what did you think of that Wilson play?
I think it was bullshit. Like it was a bit like it was ridiculous when he hit Buchnevich. I can never.
Pavel Buchnevich. Yeah,
messes me terribly. And like the Panarin thing is like I didn't actually see the Panarin thing like 3 days after it happened, because it was like I thought I saw it, and I was people like, oh well, he got jumped. Like, okay, I will give you like the first slam.
Yeah,
but like you recognize people's faces, and if you've got a guy down on the ice, you probably shouldn't be slamming him down again. And then you see one of like the faces of the NHL and you're like, no, I'm going to get a couple more in.
Yeah.
Like,
and people say that's who that player is. And same here. Cause I was, I love the rough part of hockey. I'm always on the side of let more things go. And I think over the last couple of years, it's been changing. I think again, not to, I'd mentioned Chicklets 900 times in every episode that centers on hockey, but understanding more from the player side and protecting the stars, right? Like you mentioned that with McDavid's elbow there. I totally agree. What was funny for me was I had misheard the story. What I heard going into that, I didn't see the game. I just went to look it up. And what I had heard on a podcast or somewhere was that whatever happened in this scrum, Panarin was out for the rest of the year. And I was like, holy fuck, like what happened? And then I watched that whole play out. Yeah, the shit with Buchnevich. I really didn't like that. Wilson had his stick under his face and under his neck as he's pushing him down and pulling up with his stick and just round. Like that is just too much. Like, fuck you. Didn't like that. Right. And again, I'm one of the guys that's usually on the side of fuck, let him go as long as nobody dies. It's all good. And I was even like, ooh, that's a little bit bad. And then I saw the slam on Panarin and I'm like, holy fuck. And he cracked his head pretty good on the ice. And when he threw him down, no helmet on, dangerous play. And I thought he was out for the year. And I was like, man, am I becoming that old man that doesn't like, or not even the old man? Am I becoming the young kid that, doesn't likes the skill and doesn't like that part of the game? Because I really had a reaction. I did not like it at all. I thought it was too much. I thought it was kind of shit that we don't need to see in the game. I think if that happens in playoffs, sure. But regular season, when the range is already limited, you've already clinched. Like, what are you doing, man? I really didn't like it.
Well, I think Panarin did miss the rest of the season. I could be wrong.
Maybe he did, right? But I thought
it was a thing of like it sounded more doom and gloom, and then you realize there's 3 games left.
Right. Exactly. And I think in my head going into it, I was set up to think that the injury, because I think now understanding that, he's not devastatingly injured and he's going to be okay is a different thing. But watching that clip in the moment with that pretext in my head, I think that's what I'm saying, that because I think that might be what colored me to see it differently, because now watching it back again after understanding that everything's fine and seeing Panarin kind of laugh it off after and that was a good scrum kind of thing gave me a little bit of a different take on it and maybe backed me off my position maybe a couple steps. But even still, like, having all that said and being one of those guys where I'm always on the side of let him go, for me to say, that was a little bit too far from my liking. Like, I don't like that stuff. I watch UFC every weekend. It's my favorite sport. And that's too much for me. Maybe back it off a little bit. But man, the next game that we got out of it was made up for it, I think.
Well, I'm very much, I fall on the side of like the last good hockey fight I've seen or want to see was in 2004. Like I would much rather see these guys actually be protected. Like, and yeah, Panarin's like one of the best stars in the league, and like the NHL continues to do this thing. Like, why aren't we bigger? Okay, well, one of your best stars just got mauled. Whoa, we can't like go after the fourth liner. And I know Wilson's not a fourth liner, but like, it just happens time and time and time again. And like, Wilson is becoming Matt Cook.
Yeah, and now that is the two things. It was the fact that I thought Panarin was, and it's the history. Like, sure, I mean, every time you listen to somebody like a Washington Capitals fan talk about it, there's all these caveats you can throw for Thomas, and all of these, like, there's all these excuses that come with all these incidents, right? All his suspensions, I think he's had like 6 or something. They all have this little caveat to them. But at a certain point, your caveats start to get pretty hollow when you're caveating the 9th suspension a guy's had. Like, clearly there's an issue there. And then you see something like that display, and it's like, are we really going to give you the benefit of the doubt? Like, I don't think so. Yeah. That's where I landed on it. I think a one game suspension wouldn't affect the playoffs, wouldn't affect nothing. And we wouldn't have seen the next game. Maybe they knew that game was coming and that they would bring in the ratings. Who knows what decision-making goes on behind closed doors in there. I don't know.
I think there's so much dysfunction in like the Department of Player Safety. Like, I think Mike Sillinger works in it now. And he had a comment earlier this season where he was like, well, in my day, it was on the person with the puck to worry about if you're ever going to get hit. And I was like, what? And he basically was like, if someone with the puck gets hit, I don't really care if they get hurt. Like, it's on them to keep their head up. And it's like,
and not put themselves in that position where they could get injured, right? Like,
and it's like, okay, tell it to Mark Savard. Like, tell it to Paul Correa.
I was just going to say Paul Correa. Yeah.
Like, guys got blindsided. And like, I know I've seen some people say in the past, like, I think Greg Wyshynski of ESPN was one that used to say it, where like getting guys like Peros and these former like tough guy, dirty guys is kind of like the Dexter thing of like, we'll get the serial killer on the side of the good guys.
That's a really good way to put it.
This is what they're thinking. And it's like, okay, but they're all being like, well, it wasn't that bad. And it's like, why don't we get the guy that like Paul Correa in there, who literally had his career shortened by Gary Suter decapitating him and not getting a suspension. Mark Stevens decapitating him and not getting a suspension.
Yeah. That breath of fogging up his visor will always live in my mind. I think even more than the hit, I can picture that breath he took and seeing the visor fog up almost better than I can picture the hit in my head. Like, that burned into my brain.
I watched that again the other weekend because I was writing about the Ducks, that playoff run. And that is terrifying. It's just like, and now that like I have a better understanding of head injuries and concussions, and the fact that like you realize he wasn't breathing and then that happened is like, and
wow. And the fact that he came back that game and scored, wasn't it in like overtime too?
It wasn't in overtime. I think he came back the next period and scored, but like he doesn't remember that game.
No shit. He probably doesn't remember that week, man.
But like, to see Korea talk about that now, like, he's still angry about that.
Fucking rights you would be. Like, I think you're angry about that till the day you go to the fucking dirt, man. Like, that doesn't go away.
And like him, like, I know Sportsnet did a piece on him because he like walked away from hockey for a long time.
Yeah.
And like, he didn't end up coming back to the Ducks or like hockey in general until the year the Ducks went to the conference final and beat the Oilers. And like, I remember it was a big thing when I saw him, because like I knew he'd been out of it, and the Ducks were doing this thing where every time they won, they had 16 painted around the top of the building, and they would bring a fan and a former Duck and they put an X over the win. And for the number 9, it was like they filmed the kids walking up the steps, and the kid like has the paint and hands it over, and the camera pans across, and it was Korea.
Yeah.
And I friggin' popped, like it was all the Avengers coming back at the end kind of thing. I was like, this is amazing. He's back. but they did Sports did like a little mini doc on him like a year or two later, and they asked like, have you talked to Steven since then? And you could see his tone just like, no. And I'm like, oh yeah, this like that's who we need. And the thing is, hockey had it for like 6 weeks. Because I don't know if you remember when Brendan Shanahan came into Department of Player Safety. Right. He was like, no, I'm going to protect guys. So it was like 12 game suspension, 10 game suspension. And then the owners were like, no, like that's too much. And then it went back to being like, oh, you murdered someone? $5,000 fine. Yeah. And yeah, there's just no teeth to it. So it's like with Wilson, the argument was he's not a repeat offender because this was a different type of suspension than exactly.
That's what I'm talking about. Those caveats, like that falls apart at a certain degree. Like when we're talking like that I would give you that if it was like 2 suspensions and they were both something different. And then, yeah, he's kind of not a repeat offender. Again, still, that's a bit of a stretch for me. But this one, like with Wilson, I don't think that argument holds water.
He was suspended for 7 games earlier this season. He took Brandon Carlo's head off.
But not a repeat offender though.
Yeah. A good comparison for being like someone like turning their game around is look at the way we used to see Brad Marchand.
Yeah.
He was getting suspended and causing shit and suspensions. And now it's like,
now he's just licking people.
And even that he hasn't done in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. He's really pulled back on the licking lately.
Now he's 100-point goal scorer.
Yeah. Fuck.
And like, what?
And still has that. I feel like what's so cool about him specifically is that he can put up 100 points, but all that past shit that he did still gets under the skin of those guys. Even though he's not doing as much of it anymore, people still hate. I think like people still get so off their game because of him, because almost just seeing him evolve past that and put up points pisses guys off more than the dirty slew foot hack whack shit he used to do. Right. Like, I just love that, which is the full almost character arc that you'd want to see a guy like that take is again, eventually figure out where you're too good for those antics. Like you're now where those used to be what got you to that point. Now it's hurting your game because you do more damage on the ice and getting guys off their game, but not taking you out of the ice either. Like that's so interesting to me.
It's the Stan Mikita arc.
What's that?
It's the Stan Mikita arc.
Yes. Good point. Good point. That's a deep cut. Like I said, my knowledge of hockey pre 2015 with McDavid coming in is so much different than it is after. It's so funny to listen to. I don't have so many of those deep pulls, but something like that I can pick up on. I can pick up on it. And again, for the 19th time this podcast, listening to Chicklets has really helped me with that, of really educating me back past the point where I really entered the league and started listening deeply and really caring about it to this level. But talking about Marchand, that leads in the last playoff season, this Washington Boston, right? The Wilson, the Marchand, like, how do you think this is going to play out? This is one of the ones where my gut tells me Boston, but really I don't have much to back that up.
So first off, it's hilarious that we're going to go into a series and Marchand is now the hero.
Yeah.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
I think Boston just destroys them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they were holding guys out, just like heal them up for the playoffs, but Ovechkin was out, Carlson was out, Backstrom was out.
Oh,
it was the first time that the Capitals didn't have one of those 3 guys in their lineup since like 2006.
Wow.
And it was Ovechkin missed a game. And at that point, Carlson and Backstrom weren't on the roster yet. Like they hadn't been drafted.
Yeah.
And Kuznetsov is in his second stint on the COVID protocol list.
Really?
So he's been missing time too. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I thought he was hurt. And then like in the last week, I've been like just different playoff previews like, oh no, he's in COVID. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
The Bruins just, their top 2 lines are terrifying. Like the Bergeron line is always good. Taylor Hall is a man possessed right now.
Yeah. Which I love to see as a, soft spot for him.
I'm so happy for it.
Yeah.
I think he went, because I was thinking, I was like, oh, he's terrible because he's playing Buffalo. I was like, he's been playing poorly, but like, if you were looking at the advanced numbers, everything was there. He just couldn't buy a goal. And now he's playing with guys that can finish plays in that. And like, he's got like 14 points in 16 games, I think.
Yeah. Right where he always should have been. Right. He just needed the situation. Yeah. I think everybody in hockey knew that too.
Well, I mean,
except the fucking haters that would, because obviously there was people, throwing shade at him. But
there were like at the deadline, there were people like reporters being like, I don't know if he's worth the purchase. Like, he can't win with Hall, and it's like, he's never had a shot to win,
right? Which I mean, and I think what haunts him too is I heard this story from a guy who was close to the Oilers organization, right? Like not anyone deep with them, but he said the year before Hall got traded there, the post-mortem of the season, they said they're bringing everybody in and they asked every player what they thought about Taylor Hall. And they said nobody defended him except Jordan Eberle, who was one of his best buds. They said he was the only guy who said like he wasn't bad in the room, right? And I feel like that kind of idea haunts him still, but he's grown so much since then. Like, I don't know, he might still be that guy, but I feel like I would be really surprised if a person could go through that whole arc of what he's seen in his career since then and not change and not be a different person on the other side of that. I can't imagine him today in Boston is that same guy he was leaving Edmonton all those years ago, right? And I feel like that's almost that idea of what that is. And that's what more so, I think skill-wise, everyone should know that you get him in the right situation, he can perform. And I think what I guess my worry was that is more of the off-ice stuff in the dressing room stuff and who he is there. But that is much different on a losing team than a winning team, right? That is so much different. The vibe is different. The feeling coming to the rink every day, it's easier to be positive when you're winning. And I think that's all he needed. And he's going to be dynamite in the playoffs. And he's big and he throws his weight around a little bit.
And like the bad in the room thing, like I was talking to a coworker, I was curious. I was like, would you trade for Taylor Hall? I would never want on my team. I'm like, why? He's like, because he's a cancer. I'm like, what do you have to base it off? He goes, well, in Edmonton, I'm like, so something that happened 6 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
It's like I could be wrong, but I feel like over the years I've heard he was good in New Jersey and the kids love playing with him.
Yeah.
He was decent in Arizona. Buffalo is just a toxic environment for everybody.
Yeah.
Like Ryan O'Reilly literally lost his smile and went, I can't play. Like
Ryan O'Reilly.
I don't want to play hockey anymore.
Yeah.
And then he won the Stanley Cup the next year. But so it's like, I don't know why there's that fixation on something that happened 6 years ago, and there's proof that maybe that he's changed since then.
Yeah.
Like,
and people are still stuck in that.
The two of us, like how much we would have changed in the last 6 years, let alone someone who's been forced to travel across the country and been traded and all this shit. And pushing themselves to the peak of performance in all these ways. And any way you can get the slight edge. You don't think him and his off-ice abilities are probably one of those check boxes he thought like McDavid and McKinnon have both done. Hey, I'm bad at face-offs. Like I'm going to work on it over the summer. Yeah. You don't think after a while he's going to think, maybe I need to do a little bit of work in this part of my game? Probably has. And like since getting to Boston, he's been playing on the line with Craig Smith and David Krejci. I think in the, say, 16, 15 odd games they played, they've outscored opponents 13-1.
13-1?
Yeah. It was like, I think they controlled like 92% of goals scored.
That's big.
The ice. Both lines are like scoring chances, like the Bergeron line and the Hall line, like controlling scoring chances. They're like both like 65+%.
Wow.
Basically, it's the Capitals are going to have to deal with for about 35 to 40 minutes of the night, just chasing the puck around, hoping to God they can get away.
Yeah.
And if they do, then they have to go beat Tuukka Rask, who come playoff time just goes, lol, I'm a brick wall.
Yeah. I hate when people get mad at Tuukka Rask. I feel like that is watching him play. It's
so dumb.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like everyone ripped into him last year and it's like, oh, he's a quitter. Like he was worried about his daughter in the middle of a pandemic. Shut the hell up. Like,
go fuck yourself. Right. Especially, I don't know. I mean, this is not a good argument, but I feel like almost I give him another pass because he's a goalie. And I feel like there's so much pressure on that position and so much that goes into, I mean, we already covered that earlier, but then also you're a bit of a different duck, right? And you got to give them, you got to treat them differently than you treat every other player because it's one of those roles. I think you need to treat it differently than you treat every other athlete, not just every other player in the league. And I think to dump on him for something like that is just so asinine to me and just blows me away that people, but again, there's going to be people that hate on everything. There's just people that want that, unfortunately, aren't feeling very good about themselves or whatever it is in their day. And they gotta find some way to take it out and whatever their sights line up on, that's where they're going.
The other thing too, I find with like the dumping on Tuukka Rask and those other guys where it's let's check their passport before we dump on them. Like if Tuukka Rask was born in Belleville, Ontario, and he left the playoff bubble to go take care of his daughter, they would be writing like epic stories about him for being like a true hero and all this shit. And it's like,
I agree.
Like the going back to the Toronto thing, like the amount of people that dump on William Nylander for being Swedish, and they're like, he doesn't go to the net, he's soft, yet he's one of the best net front presence goal scorers in the NHL. And it's like, but we have numbers saying you're wrong. No.
Yeah.
Trust me, my eye test. It's like, but your eye test doesn't match this at all.
Fuck your numbers. I got a feeling.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of that in the NHL. Yeah. So I think Boston, that's what I was thinking. Like I said, I had a feeling Boston was going to be the one that kind of stomped that one, but I didn't really have much to back it up. I didn't know they had that much injury trouble. I didn't know all those guys were out. Again, no idea. I've been so stuck in my North bubble.
I knew Ovechkin was out because I saw like a headline where it was the first game he missed in like 5 years.
Wow.
And then it was like he missed another one. He came back. He played like a period and a half, then he left again.
Oh no.
And then it was like, as I was looking at that, I was like, oh wait, Backstrom's out. Oh wait, Carlson's out. And then the Kuznetsov thing happened. And And then the other issue too, people have been pointing out, the Capitals played the Bruins at the end of the season, and the Bruins basically sat all their starters, and Washington squeaked out a 2-1 win. It's like,
that always bodes well.
This is not a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's interesting. So I think we decided the Florida matchup, it's that could go either way, but slight edge Tampa Bay. Yes. Toronto, unfortunately, should piston fist Montreal.
100%.
I think Edmonton could beat Winnipeg. I don't think that is a done deal by any means. I think Hellebuck is always someone, and I think Kyle Connor too. I think as good as he is, I still don't think we've seen all that he can do. I think he is a superstar. Colorado, they should walk through St. Louis. I can't imagine anything in my mind that would have that any differently. Pittsburgh, again, same with New York Islanders. That's one of those ones that always got the X factor. They could pull out the Iron Curtain and you can't get over the red line, and they could squeak out a bunch of 1-0 wins against them. Maybe the mental factor of sweeping them 2 years ago or last year, whatever that was. Maybe Vegas should beat Minnesota, but Minnesota's had their number.
Yeah, that was that. Like, I think that's the only series I've written in so far as like a 7-game series, because I'm just like, Vegas should win, but there's just that, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, there's some bad precedent set there that could swing it the other way. Carolina should roll through Nashville. Again, maybe Soros can keep that streak alive and maybe stand on his head, but I just think there's too much firepower and their defense is too good at goaltending, too well coached. And then Boston, Washington, we just covered that one. I think Boston's got it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Anything else that we need to cover? Any other storylines going in that we missed? Anything else that you saw this year that was something we should keep in mind going into the playoffs?
Not that I can think of. I mean, maybe in light of like the recent Wilson thing, this is the first time in the playoffs where they'll actually use the rule book.
Maybe. Yeah. Because they got a spotlight on them.
Like how playoff hockey is different. And it's like, I feel like that goes back to the hockey making it hard to like love itself. Cause it's like, say you bring someone over and you show them their first hockey game ever, and it's like the last week of the season. And then you show those same two teams the next week and it's the playoffs. And it's like, but that was a penalty like a week ago. Oh no, this is different. What do you mean? Don't worry about it. It's the way it's always been.
Yeah. If you watch regular season and playoffs for 4 years in a row, you'll start to understand what is different. But to try and explain to someone how it's different is impossible, right? Like, and then it's funny too, because it's almost even worse than that, because always going into a season, they have a different standard at the start of every regular season. So you have this standard all last year regular season, right? Then playoffs comes, completely different game, like it always is. Then you go into the start of this season and they're calling things like all the hookings and the slashes that are called, like any slash within 3 inches of the bottom hand is called a penalty this year. Every hook that is horizontal on a player, even if it barely impacts them, that's called like. So you go from one standard to playoffs, you come into a new season, have to learn a whole new standard. By the time you have it all dialed in by the end of the year, it all goes out the window because we're in playoffs again. So let her buck.
And like, I guess I was going to say there's something else besides the Wilson thing, but there was the referee getting caught on the hot mic saying, "I want."
Well, we got to chat about that because I'm very curious. I had a lot of feelings about that, and I'm curious what your take was on it.
I mean, it was a dumb thing where everyone's like, "I can't believe he said that." And it's like, but we all know that's how it works.
Exactly.
And that's part of like one of the problems. Like I remember growing up, my dad straight up told me, he goes, if you are on the road, you are down 2 penalties before the game even starts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a bonkers way to approach a game where like, unless you're being ref by Tim Donaghy in the NBA, you don't go into a game going like, oh, we're going to be down 20 fouls to start the game. Like it's like a foul in the first quarter is a foul in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And hockey is just so obsessed with game management.
Yeah,
it is.
But I think you can't not, because I think you could years ago, but now with all the replays and everything going on, if you make a bad penalty, you're going to see it on the screen or you're going to hear it from the coach and they have video review. So now coach goes, that trip you called didn't even make contact. He tripped on his own and he's got his iPad in front of him as a ref. You're going to take that in because you know, and then if he said that to you as a ref, I think about this often because I think with the amount of times that these guys are reffing, these guys are playing, these guys are coaching, they have relationships. They know that if you say, hey, that penalty you called was bullshit, that didn't actually happen, and you're lying, he's going to look at it after the game and say, oh, that fucker, like I played my gamemanship assuming that I made a bad call there or saw it himself. So they build up a rapport. So now when they make those bad calls, they know they're bad calls and they make them up. And I think I've seen it more this year. And it's always been like that, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like it was so tough to watch that ref get drugged through the mud for something that everybody does. He was just the unfortunate. I don't know why he was saying it aloud. I don't know why there would ever be a reason, hot mics or not, why you would ever bring that up in the game. Everybody knows it's there, but you just can't talk about it. But it sucks to see him just taking this whipping for something that everybody does. And everybody knows that they do it. Like, it was just so, I didn't like the way it was treated. And it seemed like they just like had to do it to make an example out of them, even though it's a crucial part. And I tend that if you don't have that gamemanship, hockey is a worse product almost, because I think you need that. And I feel like I like that. If you know, I feel like if you make a bad call and you don't, and then you let a call go that is somewhat on the line for the other guy, right? Like, I just think that is the thing that makes me so mad in hockey. And I love when I see a ref say, no, he had to call that one. He just made a terrible call. He knows that he had to call that one, right? That makes me happy. I feel like the refs are doing a good job. And as an NHL fan, I enjoy that. And you take that away, and now you have these games where one team gets absolutely fucked by the referee because they don't put their gamemanship in. They just see what they see and don't call what they don't call. And whatever happens from that, I think you're going to see a lot worse overall fairness, if that makes sense. And I feel like I've thought about this a lot and I have more arguments to it. And I was only able to pull a couple of them because there's on the fly, but I feel strongly that gamemanship is a crucial part of the game, that we're almost in an age where it's never going to go away. And to pretend that we have to live in a world where this just doesn't happen, that we throw the book at anybody that even brings up a mention that it happens, doesn't seem right to me.
So the guy that got dinged for that was Tim Peel. And like him saying it probably gets said by refs all the time. It just, he happened to be near where a hot mic is. Because you guarantee it's said every time you see the guys huddle around the scorekeeper's box, like, hey, why'd you make that call? Well, X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Tim Peel is kind of notorious for making really bad calls.
Oh yeah? I had no idea. I just saw one guy.
Yeah, he was a longtime referee. I don't think he's ever refereed outside of the first round of the playoffs. And like
that says a lot.
Your good referees go deeper. Like I don't think he's ever done a Stanley Cup final. He got suspended a couple years ago for he did an interview with Greg Wyshynski of ESPN, and they put up a photo of him and Wyshynski doing a shot, and the league suspended him for it. And it was because I remember back in like 2013, 2014 on like social media, it was, oh God, Tim Peel's reffing tonight, because he even knew something stupid was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I think he was one of the guys, this was like 7 or 8 years ago, where he called back a goal because in his mind, the play was dead. So therefore it was dead. And he didn't blow the whistle.
Right. Yeah.
And the league was like, that's technically the rule, and we're going to back him up for it. But everyone's like, this is stupid. Yeah. Again, why do you make us hate you?
Well, maybe there's a little more to it than I thought.
Yeah, it was. And the thing was, everyone's like, well, like, I can't believe they sacrificed him. He was retiring at the end of the season anyway.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
The fact that like the man's never refereed deep into the playoffs. It's like, okay, you didn't fire him. You just said you're not going to referee any more games. You missed out on what, 6 dates, 7 dates. Like the game management thing. it's one of those things where it's like, it does bother me because it's the thing like, why don't you just call the rule book? And I get like, if you call every infraction, it's going to be nonstop penalty kill and power play.
Yeah.
But like, you can do it where it's, you have the meeting with the teams ahead of time with the referees and be like, this is what we're calling. Mm-hmm. This is what we're going to let slide. Like,
we'll give you lots of warnings. We'll be very vocal. We'll let you know, which I love to hear that, especially with no crowds right now. You can say, let them go. Like, I'm about to call you. And you can hear so much more of that. It's so fun to watch. I love that.
Yeah. And like, I guess in my head, because it's like, in a sense, think back to like when we used to head ref dodgeball.
Yeah.
Like you had the captains be like, I am going to be calling this. I'm going to be looking for this. Yeah. If you cross this line, I'm throwing you to the gym. Like, and depending on who you knew was playing, like, you knew guys would hold the balls for 30 seconds. So you're like, I'm going to be enforcing this against you guys, but you might not do it against the other team because they are always good at respecting it.
Right.
But force it across the way, be like, I don't know, like say back in the day when Alex Burrows and Maxime Lapierre were on the Canucks, everyone knew they were fantastic at diving.
Oh my God. I still hate the Canucks just because of that.
And it's like, you could have where you're like, a referee's being like, hey, we aren't going to call like ticky-tacky trips because there's a chance you're trying to pull on over on us. Yep. If we see a stick in your skates and like you get pulled down, okay, we'll call it. But like if it's a stick like grazes your ankle, on like that, the Burrows thing, this happened like a decade ago. Because there was the referee that Burrows drew a penalty and he sold it and the referee called it. The referee saw it after the game, went, that wasn't a penalty, and went up to Burrows for the next game, went, I'm going to get you.
Yeah.
And Burrows took like 4 penalties that game. And like, you look at all 4 of his penalties and like one of them was maybe a penalty. The other thing too, like the whole game management thing of like, we just call the rules. I can't remember what podcast it was on that I listened to, but they looked at like the night before that the whole incident happened, hot mic of like the breakdown of the penalties. And everyone was like, 3-2, 3-3, 3-3, 4-3. And it's like, you're telling me in a span of 10 games, every single game was so cleanly played that they had the exact same number of penalties. And you had the Bruins playing in one game. I
agree. And that does take it out. And that's, and I think that's kind of what the game management turns into is, they're just going to make sure that it's going to be plus or minus 1 or 2 penalties each way, right? We're going to keep it close, which is not exactly what I like to see. What I like to see is helping out a bad call. If they realize they made a terrible call, I think for the rest of the game, you are on notice for anything. I'm fine. If they don't commit a penalty, you don't have to call a penalty. You can go the rest of the game where they don't get a penalty. But if there's a 50-50 trip, 50-50 hook, you got to call that. And that's the part of the game management I do like to make up for bad calls, because I feel like bad calls, I feel like that's what, with how much technology we have in the game now, we get to see the bad calls. And as a fan, you get to be affected by it because you know it was a bad call. And you get every little replay from all these different angles to see that it was a missed call. And then you go with that, right? Because that is the world we're living in and all the fans are living in that. When you have that little piece to balance that out after the fact, not saying make every game have, okay, each team gets 4 penalties this game, that's going to make it even. That's not good either. That's not hockey. But I think having that little bit of piece of it is good. And we're definitely going to have to do this again, because I have some really big thoughts on diving and how it should be treated and how it should be corrected in the NHL. I have so many thoughts on so many things that you said, but we've already gone a long time, and I don't want to keep you any longer, but we're definitely gonna have to do this again. And also, for the third fact is, I just got my first puppy, and she's outside the door and needs some cuddles. And the name of that dog, which looking at your posters, I feel like you will appreciate this, where people haven't appreciated. I named her Ahsoka Pancakes Von Walkerbuck, after my favorite Star Wars character. And I feel like seeing some of those posters, I feel like you will appreciate that.
Let's put it this way. Last Saturday, I mentioned to my dad, you should watch Star Wars Clone Wars, because he was asking about the Bad Batch series.
Yeah.
I showed him a 5-minute like sizzle reel that Lucasfilms released like a decade ago.
Yeah.
He crushed the entire first season in a day.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting daily text messages from him. He's like, have you seen this? I'm like, I've showed you the series. What are you talking about?
I think the Clone Wars TV series rivals a good amount of the movies. with how good it is. And I think once you've watched Clone Wars, and actually I also think Star Wars Rebels, not as much, but also really good series, but it adds so much more when you go back. I just did a rewatch with my girlfriend. We watched all 9 of the movies, and how much more you get out of those movies after understanding those TV shows, and how much more of the lore and stuff you get. It's so much more impactful. Like, man, like watching the like when they're talking about like holocrons and stuff in the 9th movie, like in the first, I think when I watched the 9th movie the first time, I was so angry by the first like title crawl and all the bullshit that turned the universe on its head. I was just so angry I couldn't even watch the movie. Actually watching it again recently, I was like, oh, that movie's not as bad as it was the first time, because I wasn't just seeing red from the very first moment. I was just viciously angry. Like, oh, it was interesting. But I think we're gonna have to do a whole podcast on Star Wars. Maybe we'll do it this summer when hockey's on hiatus.
I kind of did that last summer. Wasn't it last summer? I watched all the movies.
Oh yeah,
ranked them. It was oh my god. I was like, this will be an easy project. It's half the size of the Marvel movies. I did that 2 years ago. Oh my god,
it's a lot. Hey,
it's a whole whack. And I was gonna do the TV shows like a smaller scale.
Yeah,
I'm so glad I cut that, because I was like,
good call.
I didn't at the time.
Well, maybe we can have a full-on discussion on the TV shows and the movies on a podcast here coming up soon, and we'll definitely talk some more hockey. I mean, that was tons of fun. Been really itching to have a real good breakdown like that. I'm happy. I'm gonna have to try and get some good turnaround time, because I think the first game of the playoffs starts in under an hour. So I think we got to, yeah. So I'll try and get this edited up and out to the people right away, so you guys get to see. If you know, a couple games have gone by and we're a little late on it, this is why we let it get a little bit away from us on the time we allowed ourselves before playoffs started to actually record this. But hey, we can say that we did it before the playoffs started. It may only be by a couple minutes, but we did it. Congratulations. Thanks for coming on, Zach. That was so much fun. We'll definitely do it again soon. Hey,
thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, you have a great day. Enjoy the playoffs.
Enjoy your puppy.
I sure will. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed recording with Zach. It was nice to catch up. Nice to talk some hockey from a fan perspective. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do those things I always mention in the intros. Like I always say, I know it's probably getting repetitive if you listen to an episode or two, but always looking for help on the podcast. Anybody with any editing skills, anybody that just enjoys what I'm doing here and wants to throw their hat in the ring in any way, whatever skill set you have, I'd put you to work. You don't need to have any sort of specific knowledge. Just reach out if you are interested. I've got some really big plans, and all that's holding me back is just the time to do them, and the more hands I can get in the pot, stirring making things happen. That's just going to push things along at a faster pace. So yeah, follow the Instagram, follow the Twitter, all those fun things. Leave a review on iTunes. That really helps. It pushes it up the rankings and gets it in people's faces. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I know I say this every week, getting the YouTube channel caught up. It's on its way. Yeah, it should be coming out soon. All right. See you guys soon.